Chapter 641 Titch's Shock. 3 more please subscribe. Chimera. This is an extremely rare medical condition and is the phenomenon of an individual consisting of 2 or more embryos from different fertilizations, eggs, and so on. Patients with this condition have many different immune systems, blood flow patterns and even DNA depending on the number of extra embryos. This seemingly incomprehensible symptom actually exists. However, the number is too small. Even in a world with a huge population explosion, the scientific community estimates that there are only about 100 cases in the world. In this one-piece world, the population is smaller, and the number of appearances is naturally smaller. But Titch happens to be one of those. After careful observation of Loya, it was discovered that Titch's left body and his right body belong to 2 different embryos. Even if the skin color is the same, and because of years of practice, the aura has already merged, and ordinary people can't tell the difference, but under such a close observation, the enemy of his life can clearly tell him that the 2 are completely different. The left and right parts of Tiki's body are 2 real people. The only fully integrated position is Titch's brain and the consciousness that dominates this body. This consciousness belongs to Titch's left body. Loam is stunned. No wonder Marco said in the original book that Tiki's body is an alien, and he is obviously a person, but he has 2 different breaths. Others can't find it, but for their group of well-informed companions, it is difficult for Titch to hide this fact. In other words, the dark fruit eaten by Blackbeard was only lodged in half of his body. He has another half of his body that can receive the power of another devil fruit. In addition to the power of the dark fruit, which directly absorbs the fruits of others, he will seek the shocking fruit of Whitebeard and become the first dual fruit ability person in history. That's why he will start the ability hunter plan in the future to expand his power. But, what does this have to do with the soul? Even if his siblings once had a soul, and now his consciousness dominates, that soul should have disappeared long ago. Wait. Suddenly, Loya looked at Titch with an illiterate face, and said lightly, "Don't you think that your brother still has a soul left?" Brother. Hearing this, Titch was stunned for a moment, then trembled like he was insane. Sure enough. Sure enough. Is that my brother? So it is, so it is. When I was a child, I felt 2 voices in my head. I told my family, they thought I was crazy. Until one day, I couldn't help but kill another person. That voice disappeared completely. So, is he my brother? Then congratulations. You have accomplished an unprecedented achievement. Loya calmly raised his empty hand, gave a thumbs up, and exclaimed, "Kill yourself. You must know that your brother was still alive before your consciousness took over. As a result, because of your thought, your body actively squeezed his existence space, causing your soul to completely dominate. No wonder you are so ruthless. It turns out that you have been a ruthless person who killed your own brothers since you were a child. It's no wonder that you have achieved today's achievements. It turns out that your soul has absorbed the soul of your brother and turned it into nourishment. You are born with a higher starting point than others. It's eye-opening." Word by word, word by word. Titch was furious and quickened his movements. What if it's a brother? This is my body. Brothers can't take it away. At this time, Loya said faintly, "However, your head belongs to the body tissue on your right side. It should be you who took it away." "Nani?" Blackbeard froze in place. "Didn't you find it? Your head is exactly the same as your right body." "No." Before Loya finished speaking, Tiki suddenly woke up. "My dark water can limit all devil fruit abilities. The effect is stronger than Halu stone. Why can you see so many things?" "Oh, what do you think?" Seeing this, Loya was shocked. At the same time that the powerful force sent Tiki flying into the air, his right hand was wrapped with dragon scales, and his sharp claws were opened. "As a reward for clearing the doubts, I will avenge your brother, Marshal D. Teach." Puff. The sharp dragon claws passed through the heart and inserted straight into Tiki's heart. With a face full of shock, the ambitious Blackbeard lost an inch for the first time. I saw blood spurting from the corners of his mouth, and roared like a madman, you are not a devil fruit person. What kind of monster are you? What kind of monster are you? In this regard, Loya smiled, and his other hand, with a fierce whistling, grabbed at Titch's head. I'll tell you when you're dead. Boom. The root dragon claws tore apart Tiki's skin, and at the same time the skin was ripped apart, it instantly turned Tiki's face into a ghost. He once left 3 scratch marks on Shank's eyes, and this time, Loya left 5 claw marks on half of his face. However, with this attack, a black curtain appeared in the direction in which he was shot, and instantly wrapped him in it. Frowning slightly, Loya moved her fingers. It seems that your brother is a domineering genius. This bone hardness is probably not much worse than a white beard. However, there is no next time. The attack, which he thought could easily tear apart the bones, only cut into a small section of the skull, and then sluggishly knocked it out. In addition to ambition, Titch's body's talent should not be underestimated. Boom, boom, boom. Looking at the heart that was still beating after leaving the body in his hand, the amazing vitality made Loya sigh. Then, he sneered and clenched his fists fiercely. TFF'd. Without the second heart, you should be your dark fruit ability. Devil fruit needs a complete body to be parasitized, and Tiki can accommodate the second devil fruit because he has a second complete body. Have a second heart. The completeness mentioned here does not refer to the form, but a complete set of structures that can survive even without the other half. Only in this way, the devil fruit will not determine that it is the same person's body, and directly burst Tiki. But, this kind of thing will never happen. The other half of Tiki's body has died, and the devil fruit determines that the body is dead and should have dissipated. But with the survival of the other half of the body, the dark fruit transferred to his whole body and continued to exist in his body. That is to say, he can no longer deceive the devil fruit by relying on the abnormality of his body, and can only be a dark fruit ability user forever. Loya broke out until Titch escaped, and only 1 second passed, and the others were still fighting, and then suddenly, Van Oka and others found out that their captain had slipped away. Who can tell him what's going on? Shouldn't the captain have eaten the ice dragon fruit of the phantom beast species, and then slaughtered the quartet? Why, Loya was fine, but he just ran away. Well, that's not all that matters. The most important thing is that Titch is gone. What should I do? I am surrounded by enemies, but how should I break the siege? It's a hurry to wait online. Even if he didn't know what happened, Marco could see the fact that Titch was seriously injured and escaped. For the look they cast, Loya waved his hand and said, Titch dare not come back, kill them. After saying that, he walked towards the edge of the deck, and as if he had remembered something, he turned back and added, oh, right. Before the burial, according to the agreement between me and the Navy, remember to cremate the body of Whitebeard. Besides me, Titch seems to be able to do something with that corpse. Well, I see. Marco was confused, but he could still understand the meaning of Loya's words. Immediately, there was a fierce light in his eyes, and he glared fiercely at Van Oka, Poison Q, and Zisha's bosses. The rest of the Whitebeard pirates' cadres also gathered around, and for a while, Murderous Aura was on the deck. Ah! Captain, save me! Listening to the screams coming from behind, Loya took a deep look at the huge crack again, spread her wings, turned and rushed into the sky. Whitebeard, do you think you won? Do not despair, never stop. Chapter 642 Pirate Raid. This is a battle that will go down in history. Even the unprecedented scale of the top war is just a green leaf and foil for this battle. Because, this is the first time since the appearance of those inhuman powerhouses, showing the means that can be called gods. And there was not one, but two. Whitebeard's tremor that ripped apart the sky, and Roha's ability to freeze time, clearly engraved the vastness of heaven in everyone's heart. Under that kind of earth-shattering mighty force, all the plans and all the calculations are ridiculous. However, there is only one winner in the end. Loya's victory brought a higher prestige to Turtle Island. Whether it was a navy or a pirate, after watching the only first half of the battle scene, he gave Loya a new title at the same time. Ice Dragon, Ice Emperor. The King of Ice and Snow. Pirates all over the world are once again in a state of panic. That trace of courage and blood that finally gathered, was completely frozen by Loya once again. However, Loya succeeded and failed at the same time. Because on the Yuhi Soil continent, a majestic canyon that traverses the entire Yuhi Soil continent also stands here. Animals will violently hurt people when they are driven to a desperate situation. Dogs will jump off the wall when they are in a hurry. A group of pirates who have been driven crazy is naturally even more crazy. On the second day of the war, when the Navy was still counting the losses and comforting the families of the deceased, and only a small number of troops were left to guard the canyon, a moving continent floated over from a distance, with the goal pointing directly to the New World. After defeating Whitebeard, Loya returned directly to Turtle Island. This world is still ruled by the world government. Before they are really powerless to suppress, Loya will not break the rules. Pirates also understand this truth, so they chose this point in time to attack the New World. Although Fishman Island does not have so many Navy guards, the challenge of 10,000 meters under the sea can eliminate a large number of people. Even if they successfully entered the New World, the location where they appeared was very close to Turtle Island. In that case, it is better to rush over from here and avoid the ice field from the beginning. The sea is so vast that even the undead army cannot fully control it, and there are always fish that slip through the net. Holding such a fluke, a large group of pirates united silently and chose to silently attack the canyon. Report. The flagship of the Bacon Pirates appears ahead. The Bear's Paw Pirates ship is approaching from the left. That's the Hawkins Pirates. This year's supernova. In the temporary command center of a warship, the soldiers reported the traces of each pirate group. Hearing the report, Aokiji, the commander of the place, pulled down his blindfold and looked up at the surveillance screen. Ah la la, these little guys are really uneasy at all. Originally, in the past, Akainu was the first to jump out of this task of confronting the pirates. But at this moment, because of his broken arm, he is still recuperating in the headquarters hospital. Kizaru slipped away yesterday, and it is estimated that until Sengoku calms down, he will never come back unless an order is issued. So, this kind of task had to fall on Aokiji. However, if you get rid of you, my prestige among the soldiers will definitely be higher. When the marshal abdicates after finishing, it will be much easier for me to pack up. So, Aokiji was very diligent, patted his butt and stood up. Prepare for battle. When will the reinforcements from the headquarters arrive? Yes. About half an hour later. Shocked by the fighting spirit on Aokiji's body, the deputy was stunned for a second before answering. Half an hour. All that's left is the leftovers. After a moment of silence, Aokiji pulled up the cloak on the side and walked out in the name of Heish. Outside the warship, the Navy has already opened the formation and conducted the first wave of frontal firefights with the pirates. Even if the number is far less than the opposite, the special artillery of the Navy, the huge warships several levels ahead of the opponent, and the equipment advantages can make the pirates suffer a lot. Boom, boom. The artillery fire continued, and the white waves rolled. A pirate ship was hit by artillery in this unavoidable strait and turned into a splendid fireworks. Those pirates who survived by chance have nowhere to hide. Even if the Navy doesn't make up for it, the allies behind them will smash them into pieces. Stop, there is no hope. Everyone understands this. Seeing that the pirate boats behind were all equipped with rams, Chingzi said lazily, "It really is a pirate. Just now, I was courteous to each other. As soon as this happens, the old love is gone." Standing on the floating ice, Aokiji squatted down silently and put half of his palm into the seawater. However, how could it be possible for you to pass? Ice Age. Swish. Suddenly, the cold wind suddenly rises. A piece of pure white quickly spread across the sea, and the nearly 10,000-meter-wide strait was frozen into ice in the blink of an eye. The pirate ships were like pieces of meat on a chopping board, frozen in place and unable to move. Damn it. It turned out to be a green pheasant. No way. Abandon the ship, grab the warship. The 3 admirals of the Navy are all those with natural fruit ability, and their attack range is far beyond ordinary people's imagination. But among the 3, the last thing the pirates want to meet is Aokiji. Because he is a frozen fruit person, freezing a sea area is simply not too easy. For pirates who live on boats, if they can't even move the boat, it's really dying. Obviously, Sengoku also did this because of this, so he didn't let Akainu, who was still lying on the hospital bed but eager to fight, come over, but directly appointed Aokiji. Frozen fruit may be lacking in attack power, but at this moment, it is undoubtedly used to stop pirates. Hearing the cry of the pirates, Aokiji scratched his head in disgust. It's really troublesome, can't you just go back directly? This is their last hope. I don't think they can miss this opportunity, so please don't have such unrealistic expectations. Beside him, the adjutant complained sharply as always. Hi, I know, did I do it? Shaking his head helplessly, Chingzi strode forward, waved his sleeves, and the dense ice spears were suspended behind him. Kill. The general takes the lead, and the rest of the soldiers naturally cannot fall behind. Soon, the 2 groups of dark clouds collided, and between the Navy and the pirates, a battle for the purpose of annihilating each other started again. The sound of gunfire was incessant, and the big pirates who used to boast of being extraordinary all fell down in front of the naval admiral's power. Soon, the entire battlefield moved from left to right, little by little. Damn it, Captain Hawkins, the whole army will be wiped out at this rate. A pirate braved the white mist and looked anxiously at his captain. The white mist was formed in this ice and snow, and the sweat on the body was evaporated by the body temperature and drifted away. After listening to the other party's words, Hawkins was still in a hurry and placed the tarot cards on the straw that stretched out. Then, after careful observation, he opened his mouth. Don't worry, today is not our day of death. The card told me everything. Speaking of this, Hawkins listened carefully, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Come on. Chapter 643 Shadow of the Sea King. In the center of the battlefield, Aokiji, who was constantly using his methods to kill the enemy, suddenly stopped moving. He heard a low cry, and behind the ice beneath his feet, something huge seemed to be approaching. Not good. Sea Kings. Suddenly, Aokiji jumped and threw out 2 ice jinchuriki column with his left and right hands, pushing most of the Navy soldiers into the distance. But those soldiers who staggered with the pirate dog Kobo were not so lucky. The next moment, accompanied by a deafening roar, one with a huge single horn on its forehead and limbs in the shape of fish webs, the golden lion smashed through the ice and rushed out suddenly. The screams suddenly sounded. Whether it was a pirate or a navy, they were all thrown into the sky by the collision. Even if they were not killed and fell from a height of 500 or 600 meters, the sea water was no different from the iron. Different. One after another pirate ships were smashed and shattered. In front of the giant sea kings, the human beings were as small as ants, and fell into the water with wailing. This even includes this year's supernova, Scarecrow, Hawkins. What a huge body. Is this a giant sea king? Aokiji looked at the sea lion in surprise, no mistake, shocked by the size of the other party. The horizontal volume alone almost fills the canyon with a width of tens of thousands of meters. The huge torso exposed in the air, even if it doesn't make any attack, it will be a shipwreck when it turns over. But, why are the Aquamans here? Yuhi continent. Could it be that it came from Fishman Island under 10,000 meters? Aokiji frowned and fell back to the sea. The toes were a little on the sea water, and an ice surface quickly extended out, trying to freeze the Sea King. He is the Admiral of the Navy headquarters, the highest combat power of the Navy. What if the opponent is a giant Sea King? If you don't even have this ability, Malenford has long been destroyed by various Sea King attacks like an ordinary island, how can it still stand for 800 years? The strong human beings in this world are not afraid of these huge monsters at all. Crack clap. The crisp sound of freezing continued to sound, and soon climbed the body of the sea lion. However, at this time, the other party also had a sense of alertness, twisting his body frantically, and before his body could not move, his head dived into the seawater. It's a beast, and it will give up once its life is threatened. Looking at the thousand-meter waves stirred by the sea kings ahead, Aokiji raised his hands, and a big ice bird quickly took shape. Violent pheasant mouth. Tweet. Fluttering its wings, the pheasant's mouth slammed on the waves, freezing it in the blink of an eye. Afterwards, the green pheasant kicked the ice cubes with one foot and walked to the other end of the sea wave ice sculpture. Looking at the group of soldiers and pirates who accidentally fell into the sea, he regained his strength and froze the sea again. Resolve the battle as soon as possible. Save your comrades. Yes. The appearance of the Sea King was only regarded as a small episode by the green pheasant. Since it was repelled once, then knowing that he could kill it, the opponent would never appear a second time. The pirates looked desperate and watched as they were frozen by a little bit of ice. Immediately afterwards, the navy regrouped and swarmed again, but... Ow! Again. Aokiji suddenly widened his eyes and looked at the ice layer under his feet in disbelief. Retreat. Hurry back. Sure enough, just after evacuating the center position, the Sea King smashed the ice again and was exposed to the air. It's just that this time it learned to be smart, and without waiting for the green pheasant to make a move, it propped itself up on the Yuhi soil continent and slipped into the sea without looking back. This time, the green pheasant can finally be sure that the Sea King in front of him is deliberately destroying the ice layer. This is by no means that he interferes with the other party's living space. Like this giant Sea King, a strait is like a human wardrobe to them. There is no problem standing in it, but if you want to live in it and be your own boss, it is obviously not possible. That is to say, someone's controlling it. Jones. For the first time, Aokiji thought of Alien Jones, a senior cadre in Turtle Island who can communicate with animals and who is very close to this place. But then, Aokiji thought that doing so would do no good to Loya. It even runs counter to his goal. So, since it's not Jones, what else exists to communicate and even control and drive the Sea Kings? With a solemn expression, Qingzi slowly said those words. Ancient weapons, Sea King. Under the waters thousands of meters deep, Hawkins' pirate flagship, on this pitch-black seabed, slowly moved forward with the ocean currents. On this ship, it was Hawkins who fell into the sea when the Sea Kings collided before. Around the hull is a thin, airless film that looks like it could be pierced with a single finger. However, it is such a layer of film, but it makes 10,000 tons of seawater helpless. This is a natural resin secreted by the Yuhi tree of Alchiman, a fragile film that can withstand extremely high weights as long as it does not leave the climatic range of the Chambord Islands. It is even said that after coming to the bottom of the sea, according to the characteristics of the oil, the ship can sail in the sea. Standing on the deck, Hawkins said to his co-captain while wringing his clothes, "Set the direction, cross the position of Fishman Island, and enter the Great Trench directly." Yes. The Hawkins pirates are named after Hawkins. As the captain, Hawkins has the absolute right to speak. Before, the deputy captain didn't understand why he let himself start from Chambord and dive into the sea to follow them, until now he understands. It turned out that the captain had already predicted the results of all this. The navy and pirates above were beaten to death, and they sneaked away from the bottom of the sea without disturbing anyone. Hearing Hawkins' order, the vice captain gave him a respectful and admiring look, and then went to work on his own business. At this moment, Hawkins raised his head, looked at the faintly visible behemoth in the depths of the dim sea water, and sighed silently. Although everything was going according to the divination, he didn't know who was the one who ordered this Sea King to hit the ice, giving them a chance to take advantage of it. In the face of powerful enemies such as Loyana, they chose to enter the New World at this moment. Is it right or wrong? At this moment, an exclamation suddenly came from behind. "Captain! That's the Kid Pirates. They also sneaked over from Chambord." That's right. This person has no signs of death on his face, and is naturally safe. Hawkins was very calm, and continued to play with his tarot cards. He even slowed down the speed of the ship, waiting for Kid's pirate ship to catch up. The two sides stood side by side, drawing swords from each other. But no one dared to do it. Fighting here, waiting for their ending is definitely the resin being smashed, and the 10,000-ton seawater pouring in instantly, crushing them into pieces. Looking at Kid quietly, Hawkins said slowly, "You, and the people behind you, owe me a favor. This is the guidance of fate, because I took risks and changed my fate. You guys only then can we safely pass through the strait." Quote. Humph. Godly babbler. Kid didn't seem to appreciate it at all, and his face was full of disdain. But he also had to admit that Hawkins did help them. After having a more convenient and safe strait channel, the pirates gave up the Fishman Island with a high elimination rate, and no longer considered the coating. The monsters of the Undead Legion are all floating in the sea. Once they find their traces, the end is very unpleasant. Only Hawkins did the opposite, coated the film, but did not go to Fishman Island. Instead, he let his subordinates follow the large army from below the sea surface, and use the cover of battle to avoid such terrifying powerhouses as Aokiji. Such a good strategy, Kid naturally followed suit. Because there was a short detour, the straight line between the 2 points was the shortest. During the conversation, the huge ocean trench in front had already appeared. It was just that in the darkness, a pair of gorilla Yuhi's eyes suddenly opened, greedily staring at the two pirate ships. This is the last test, some sea beasts who like to live in rocky cliffs. Chapter 644 Christopher. The Valley of the Red River, this is what the world calls that new passage. The reason for this name is not only because of the gorgeous Yuhi soil on both sides of the passage, but also because of the bloody battlefield. In that battle, not only the Navy suffered heavy casualties, but the pirates even more. The war lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and thousands of pirate groups rushed over to join this carnival party. The Navy did not care about the damage after the war, and dispatched all kinds of elite soldiers, like a majestic mountain, smashing the ambitions of countless pirates on the spot. The consequence of this war is that even after a month has passed, the bloody aura there has not dissipated. The Yuhi soil continent is flooded with blood. Yuhi's dazzling light reflects the entire canyon's sea surface like blood. This is a road paved with blood in the true sense. The final outcome was that the Navy narrowly won, except for the top combat power. The ordinary soldiers lost more than half, so that the deterrence of the Navy in the sea was affected. However, with such a huge movement, the Ice Dragon did not pay attention to it, and stayed in the Turtle Island with peace of mind, isolated from the outside world. Some people speculated that his battle with Whitebeard hadn't healed, so he didn't show up. This speculation has been confirmed by many people. After all, before the birth of the Valley of the Red River, the Kid Pirates and the Hawkins Pirates smuggled across the Yuhi soil continent from the bottom of the sea and came to the New World, but Loya did not destroy them with the power of thunder. Many people are wondering where Loya has gone. Is he seriously injured or is cultivating with peace of mind? But no matter what, in the face of today's prestigious Loya, no one has the courage to provoke him. After all, the 4 sovereigns have become a thing of the past, and the current New World is the world of an emperor. That is, Ice Emperor, Loya. In Turtle Island Castle, Robin walked in with a water basin. Looking at the figure sitting cross-legged on the mattress, he sighed faintly. It's just practice, it doesn't take a month to eat or drink. After sighing, Robin skillfully wrung out the towel and wiped the dust on Loya's body. If it wasn't for Ulysses's soul guarantee, Loya was no exception at this moment, and Robin would only be more anxious than now. Between dreams, this is the 3rd time that Loya has come to this land. Loya has been trying to contact Edith since Drago pointed out that he was the king of ancient weapons. However, the other party didn't have any answer, and even that time, they couldn't communicate between dreams. But since the end of the war on the top that day, Loya felt a pulling force covering him from all directions. That is the rejection from the world, and there is a call between dreams. So Loya hurried back to his base camp and closed his eyes. This is a month. Between the dreams, it was still as majestic and magnificent as the first sight. The vast starry sky flickered overhead, and Loya stepped on this void, existing and yet non-existent. Suddenly, in the darkness of the starry sky, a shadow swayed inexplicably. Immediately afterwards, a huge body that could not be described in words slowly emerged from there, and the golden scales shone with a hazy luster under the light of the stars. The golden dragon guardian saw Loya. A hint of surprise flashed in the golden vertical pupils, the upper and lower jaws opened and closed, and the voice was like a bell. It seems that you have encountered a little trouble, Loya. For this kind of eternal existence, Loya has nothing to hide. Yeah, I was squeezed out of the One Piece world. Only the soul. Clenching the fist, the familiar magic power disappeared, as did the great power of the dragon body. Now Loya is like a stronger ordinary person. Looking at the dragon's eyes, he is a little dizzy. Weak. Endless weakness. This is something that Loya has not felt for many years. His heart is empty. It seems that after losing his strength, his whole person has undergone unpredictable changes. For all this, the dragon knows it. He nodded and said, "It's a normal thing. You fought a battle with Whitebeard at your peak, and your strength has already exceeded the limit that this world can hold. Even if you are a native of the One Piece world. To paraphrase what you can understand, Suddenly, a strange smile appeared on the dragon's hideous dragon face. Congratulations on your ascension in the daytime. Hold the grass. Loya was stunned in place, remembering the movies he had seen in the past, and said in a daze, then what should I do? I still have so many things to do. Soaring during the day, immortals are forever separated. This thing is no joke. Thinking that Robin was still waiting for him in the One Piece world, Loya was so anxious. Is there any way to go back? Well, this question, let's ask the person behind you. The golden dragon said. The huge body across the star field slowly drifted away, turned into endless golden powder, and gradually disappeared. I believe, you have a lot of questions to ask her now. After being stunned for a second, Roha turned his head, looked at the group of human-shaped lights and shadows, and asked tentatively. Edith. That's the word that represents death and darkness in the ancient world of One Piece. It was later translated as Heavenly King, and it was the name they gave me. The light and shadow condensed slightly, revealing a gorgeous face below. Although there is a layer of yin-yang white light around it, people can't see clearly. But an inexplicable sentence appeared in Loya's mind. Pian is like a frightening bird, and graceful is like a dragon. Her voice was nice and had an indescribable attraction. As for my original name, I can't remember, but you can call me Ivy. Ivy. Yes, Christopher Ivy, the white voice said quietly. This is the name I have given myself, and it is also one of my favorite. Christopher. I see. Loya knew instantly that from the day he crossed over, he had carried the surname, Christopher. He always thought that this was arbitrarily arranged by the system god according to the rules of the One Piece world. However, as the memory gradually emerged, Loya remembered that there was a place called Wano-kuni in that world, and there was a kid who had to die, named Kazuki Momonosuke. If it appears according to the rules of the One Piece world, although I don't want to admit it, he is indeed more similar to the people of Wano, and it shouldn't be this westernized name. What's more, the system disappeared after that, and what reappeared was a dream guardian named Edith. Wait, suddenly, Luoya raised his hand and frowned. I can be sure that there is nothing wrong with my soul, and the name I inherited is still, Luo. If I say, I mean if this surname is preserved because of my soul, then the surname, Christopher. You are still as sharp as always, Loya. Edith, now called Ivy. Ivy smiled faintly, suddenly floated to Loya's side, and hugged him in his arms. Your body came from me, child. ... T.F. During a trip, I will find a mistress for our father inexplicably. The old lady will kill me if she finds out. Please forgive the peculiarity of Loya's brain circuit, because at this moment he was in extreme shock. The rest of the vocabulary, it is really difficult to express his heart, my FFFF. Buddha's compassion. Chapter 645 The Collapse of the Illusion. Seeing Loya's expression, Ivy nodded his head, and said with some amusing, "Do you really think that with just one obsession, you can bring such a powerful external force as the ice dragon into the illusion?" Facing the tender and tender like water, there was no ripple in Loya's heart at this moment. Instead, there was an embarrassment of doing something stupid and being pointed out by the mother. But Ivy said it well. Among Loya's 3 obsessions, entering the world of One Piece is the easiest, and every lucky person who comes to the dreamland can do it. And becoming an ice dragon slayer mage is just an additional mage inheritance. Among the 3, there is only the root of the ice dragon slayer, the body of the frost dragon of Azeroth, and there is absolutely no possibility. If that kind of powerful external force can be taken away with just a single point of obsession, wouldn't it be very embarrassing to dream nightmares? Loya had guessed in this regard before, but since the 2 could not be contacted, his guess could only be guesswork. It is only today that Ivy has answered this speculation. But then again, could it be that his dragon body was actually hatched from a dragon egg? This can explain why in the previous 3 stages of the system, you need to eat such a large amount of food to level up. Because hatching dragon eggs undoubtedly requires a huge amount of energy. However, this idea was immediately overturned by Ivy. It seems that in front of her, Loya has no way to hide any thoughts. "What are you thinking, silly boy, haven't you found it yet?" Ivy leaned against Loya and fiddled with his head like a toy. "Your dragon body is part of my body. You are mine, the biological, flesh and blood, all you need to do is fuse. What's the point of having a baby if it's not for play?" The corners of Loya's mouth twitched, and she quickly broke free. He's just an ordinary person now, and if he keeps shaking like this, to be honest, he's about to vomit. However, suddenly he blinked and asked uncertainly, "Part of it? That is to say, there is another part left in the world of One Piece?" "Well, that's right." Ivy was not interested in this. She waved her hand and said, "About 300 years ago, just like you are now, my mother didn't hold back for a while, and was directly repelled by the illusion." Looking at this cheap fairy-like mother in front of her, the old lady, who opened her mouth and closed her mouth with the gesture of a lady, this caused a great blow to Loya's heart. Sure enough, fairy tales are all lies. When there are outsiders, any mother will try her best to leave a kind gesture in her child's eyes. And when only his son is present, that nature is exposed. Rolling the eyes of the dead fish, Loya's mouth twitched. "Look at the way you can only squeeze with me now, which means that you have no control over the other part of your body." Just as you guessed, no luck. Then how should we go back? Luoya was a little mad, feeling worried for his unreliable cheap mother. "Do you know what your body has been doing in the past 300 years? She made the giant's race. Created a dragon-slaying sword. This is to deal with another part of the body, right? It's me, right? Even if there is no soul, it does not mean that the body has no consciousness." Ivy replied in a hurry. "What's more, I'm waiting for the dragon. She wants to kill another part of her body and let her. It is the instinct of every living being to become perfect, isn't it?" As soon as I heard this, Loya had the bottom line. Since Ivy knew these things, she was definitely prepared, otherwise she would not be suddenly pulled here by her. So, Loya spread his hands and sat on a certain sun that was not scorching hot. "Please start your show." "Humph. Of course, the old lady is ready." Ivy moved slightly, and her figure suddenly disappeared. When she reappeared, a blackboard suddenly appeared in the endless starry sky. Holding the baton that came from some unfortunate conductor, Ivy coughed twice and slammed it on the blackboard. "The dragon's body is extremely powerful, and even if it has no soul, it will follow its instinctive actions. This is something that Illusionary Nightmare has not considered. But it's good to get used to it. Most of them are stupid, even basic logic. Neither. But, because of its fault, a giant dragon's body was out of control, and it was a disaster. Although I really want to say that this is what it asked for, but as a guardian, I can't let it go. Or else the illusion will be destroyed. Ask. Loya raised her hand. Student, please tell me. What does the destruction of illusion represent? Will it have any impact on the origin of illusion, that is, reality? Good question. As expected of an old lady. Pointing at the key. While praising Loya, Ivy affirmed herself, and wrote a few words with chalk on the blackboard. Destruction of illusions is divided into 4 situations. 1. It is the destruction of dreams, and all the illusions are recast. This situation is useless, it belongs to a normal physiological cycle, just like the ant. Hee. The destruction of dreams is also a big problem, right? 2nd. Ivy tapped the blackboard again and glared at Loya. It is the disappearance of the source of the illusion, which leads to the disappearance of the illusion itself. To understand in your words, that is the author's eunuch, abandoned the pit, and doesn't want to write. As long as in reality, its creator no longer gives birth to new ideas, and the illusion will naturally be destroyed. But for the real world, it is also useless. 3rd. This time, Ivy wrote 2 Chinese characters, Oda, on the blackboard. The 3rd situation is that the illusion collapses itself due to irresistible factors. This factor can be the collapse caused by the instability of the illusion, or it can collapse due to the destruction of external factors. In your current situation, it is belonging to this 3rd case. At the same time, taking out a Yuhi-colored chalk, Ivy made a big cross on the word, Oda. At the same time, the collapse of the illusion caused by irresistible factors, for the author in reality. That is fatal. If the fantasy world collapses today, the old thief Oda will choke to death by drinking cold water tomorrow. Although I am very disgusted with his behavior of dragging the plot, I know that it is only a compromise of interests. Compared with the old thief Fujian, he still has more integrity. Quote. Hey, Mom, you seem to have said something incredible. So, as a guardian, for the finale of One Piece, the old thief Oda can't die. Ivy slapped the blackboard with an excited slap and slapped the powder all over the place. After a pause, she added, at the same time, in order to save the world of One Piece and my daughter-in-law, we must stop the soulless body from running wild. Now that you've been squeezed out of the illusion, it's no surprise that the inside is about to start moving. Chapter 646 2 months later. Then what should we do? Immediately, Loya asked a crucial question. Like me, you were directly squeezed out of the illusion, which means that we can't return to the world of One Piece. Even if you use the part of the dragon body I held to return to the world of One Piece, it seems that there is no way to return to the body directly. Take control, right? That's right, so this time I'm going to take a sideways sword. Ivy said domineeringly. This plan should have started a few years ago, but you were too weak to complete the task, so it was postponed for a few years. So, do you remember your oath to be a guardian? After a moment of silence, a firm smile appeared on Loya's face. Of course. Very good. Ivy nodded, and a white ball of light emitting a strong vibration suddenly condensed in the void. That kind of power Loya is very familiar with, and it is the shocking fruit of Whitebeard. If you want to become a guardian, you have to return what you brought out of the illusion. Ivy said what she told Loya the last time she met. Half of the dragon's body is in me, so you don't need to worry about it for the time being. Fairy Tale World Sorcerer's legacy is the source of your battle, Izumi, don't think about it too soon. But this, you must return it immediately. Why is Whitebeard's tremor fruit here? As soon as the words came out, Loya knew that he had asked a stupid question. Ivy has said before that the power that is not contained will be expelled from the fantasy world by the nightmare, similar to the daytime soaring. Being able to fight with oneself, and even the last cut off the sky, threatens his own life. There is no doubt that the power of Whitebeard also exceeds the tolerance limit allowed by the illusion. And Whitebeard's source of power, Izumi, is all on that shocking fruit. So this time it was not only Loya who was squeezed out, but also the shocking fruit of Whitebeard. Loya understands this truth when he thinks about it, but he is a little tired. He is clearly the one who should pay the debt, but instead he owes more and more. Now your first task is to absorb this group of energy. Don't worry, I have eliminated the curse inside. The rules of the little illusion can't help your mother and me. Mighty Mother. Loya shouts. No, can't I just take it back? Why should I absorb it? Hee, what do you bring back with you, an incorporeal soul? If you don't melt it into your soul, do you still wear pants kabuto? Loya's head. That is to say, including the clothes on his body, are simulated according to his own thinking. The soul itself is intangible and intangible, and this characteristic is even more strengthened in the illusion. Honestly holding the junjun fruit without the appearance of fruit, Loya thought for a while, opened his mouth and put the ball of light into his mouth. In an instant, the vibration broke out. It seems that the surrounding starry sky is like a dream. The fluctuations from the tiny Loya's body make ripples appear on the huge stars that are not many light years away. Ah, oh, stop, ah. While admiring her son's screams, Ivy forcibly tore down a door from the void that had begun to loosen. Explained to Loya, this is the fourth way of extinction of the illusion, cannibalism. Every door between dreams represents an illusion. The door floating in the void looks flimsy and fragile, but it is indestructible. Another reason for Ivy to let Loya absorb the shock fruit is to take them down by shock. As she spoke, the door on her hand, with the momentum of an ant throwing a mammoth over her shoulder, slammed into the golden door representing the world of One Piece. Bang! When the two collided, the short door instantly turned into a sky full of stars, spreading out in all directions. But then, these fragments were like iron filings that met a magnet, and were instantly pulled by the golden gate, and then fell into it little by little. Cannibalism is not the complete extinction of the previous three. What is swallowed is only energy, not the source. It belongs to sustainable development. Ahem, but this kind of cannibalism will leave an indelible mark on the illusion of being cannibalized. Even if it is recast in the future, it cannot be erased, and it is not impossible to directly turn into an open illusion in the end. It is like that layer of film, it will pass without it. Now is not the time to talk about dirty jokes. Come and help me think of a way. Ah! Without finishing a word, Loya cried out again in pain. It's so easy to get the power without having to bear the curse. Don't worry, you won't die if your mother is here. Then I really thank you. In the distance, the golden dragon raised his head and glanced here, then put his head on a star and narrowed his eyes comfortably. Well, it's a rare reunion, just let them get along for a while. I'm so kind. It's the scream that's a little annoying. 1 month, another month. If it wasn't for Robin Tenten to help Loya clean with a water basin, he would probably have been hung up on cobwebs by now. I thought that the world would be calmer than ever when we just experienced the war on the top. But I didn't expect that the next day, the world-shattering battle of the Red River Valley occurred. The corpses floating in the canyon made countless carnivorous fish swarm, and these fish attracted even bigger sea beasts, and the sea beasts attracted sea kings. In such a reciprocating cycle, this canyon, which has just appeared and is called the Road of Hope, in the mouth of the pirates, has become the nest of several sea kings standing at the top of the food chain. Even the undead army led by Jones is not sure to build a station under the siege of these big guys. In the end, it can only give up and choose to block it in the outer area. This is a way of life. After rushing over, the sea is vast. As long as you avoid the ice area, there is a great chance that it will not be discovered by Turtle Island. But if you want to rush over, this is not the kind of thing where luck outweighs strength when diving into Fishman Island. It's a moment to test the true power of a pirate group. In addition to this valley of the Red River called the Road of Hope, just a few days ago, there was another major incident in the sea. The monkey D. Luffy who appeared in the top war and ended up hitting a Chan Oil was successfully rescued with the help of Fire Fist, Ace and other members of the Whitebeard Pirates. Became the second man to escape from the big underwater prison in the Advanced City after the great pirate, Golden Lion, Shiki 20 years ago. But what if you thought it was over? The old fishermen tell you, naive. Just an hour after Luffy was rescued, a man named Marshall D. Teach, while the warden Magellan went out to chase the pirates, sneaked into the chaos alone. Advance City. Moreover, the ferocious thugs in LV.6 that did not exist in the legend were released, and a Blackbeard pirate group was reformed, and the power was even close to the other 4 emperors. Moreover, he also took away the deputy director of the Advance City, Shiryu of the Rain. It made the world government lose face, and the wanted order for Shiryu directly rose to 500 million. Because of this, Turtle Island had to disperse its forces and hunt the pirates who escaped prison on the sea. Teach is as smart as ever, even if someone treats the Blackbeard pirates as the new 4 emperor pirates at this moment. He hides in Tibet all day long, not giving the undead army the opportunity to encircle and suppress them. What happened in just 2 months is really overwhelming. At the same time, the intelligence analysis on the latest forces in the New World was also placed on the desks of the leaders of various organizations. Chapter 647 Sengoku was killed. I wish you all a happy new year. Turtle Island, Castle Hall. When Loya fell asleep, Robin justifiably became the owner of Turtle Island. Although there are people who are responsible for the deployment of military orders and planning and layout, and there is no need to worry about loyalty issues, a force must have a ruler on the bright side. Especially when some important people visited, it was a bit too domineering to send Ulysses to come forward. At this moment, there was such an important guest who came to Turtle Island, forcing Robin to come forward. Because the person here is Loya's former mentor, former admiral and current admiral, Qingzi. New eras are changing and new leaders are needed. Sengoku's performance in the war on the top chilled the soldiers' hearts. After counting the losses and appeasing the families of the fallen soldiers, it was convenient for the entire navy to witness and announce his resignation. Afterwards, Aokiji came to power, and Akainu, who had broken his arm, was indignant, but he knew that he was not Aokiji's opponent and had nothing to say. But his ambitions could not be extinguished because Aokiji came to power. The arrival of the new admiral today is to talk to Loya about Akainu. Is Loya still awake? Sitting in the guest seat, Aokiji rubbed his eyebrows. I thought the world would be more peaceful after the war, but I didn't expect it to be more chaotic. Now that the war is imminent, the navy alone may not be able to survive it. A few days ago, soldiers on a routine patrol spotted several undeclared warships leaving port. Just as he was about to step forward to question him, he was knocked unconscious by Ghost Spider and the others. Aokiji, who got the news, rushed over quickly. After some investigation, it was found that all the hawkish admirals followed Akainu and headed towards Malinford. In their residence, the resignation reports were neatly arranged, explaining their purpose. Regardless of whether the navy under the command of Aokiji can continue to maintain the name of justice as they predicted, there is no justice at all for this behavior of not reporting for resignation. There are 3 fires when a new official takes office, and Aokiji is no exception. The angry Aokiji ordered to capture the traitor Akainu and his henchmen. However, they failed. In the world government, whether it is Carlo or the 5 old stars, they do not want to see the navy becoming stronger and stronger, and they have sent fleets to intercept them. The 2 sides fought for several days, and finally ended with the return of the Marine headquarters to Marineford with heavy casualties. This battle did not make much turbulence, because no insider dared to leak it, and no newspaper reporter dared to report. However, the calm that followed allowed the world government to see a chance. The reason is that the Emperor of the New World, Ice Dragon, Loya, did not stand up to express any attitude. This gave them a signal. That is Loya, not the need for the navy as imagined. They used to think that Loya had surrendered the navy, but in fact, Turtle Island and the navy headquarters were only cooperative and were forced to make a choice. Therefore, as long as they don't hurt the Zephyr flying squirrels who have friendship with Loya, what they do is their own business. After getting out of the misunderstanding of thinking, they took back the naval headquarters and brought them to the table. But they are still afraid of Loya, and it is only a small-scale test. If Loya continues to remain silent, then this temptation will turn into a full-scale war, taking back the Navy by force. Looking at the current naval power, it is impossible to compete with the world government. What's more, it was the Antonio family who acted as the mastermind this time. Then, the Green Pheasant came to Turtle Island to seek help from Loya. But the answer he got made him couldn't help but sigh. Loya didn't die, which is a good thing. But he fell into a deep sleep, and it is estimated that he would not wake up without being hit on Turtle Island. No matter how urgent his own affairs are, Aokiji has to take into account Loya's thoughts. If interrupting his slumber affects any plan, he can't take responsibility. Simon listened quietly and frowned. In any case, the Navy is still under the banner of the world government. The world government division is notorious for disobeying commands and orders. Previously, he also knew about the friction between the Navy and the world government, but because of Loya's sleepiness, he had never been able to express anything beyond his authority. Unexpectedly, this kind of silence made the world government misunderstand the meaning of it, and sharpened the knife to the pig and sheep. Also, there is a family there. No matter how much he hated that place, it was his roots. Once the world government becomes the same as Malenford, the Weston family will be severely suppressed. Looking up at Ulysses, Simon said, "Perhaps, Loya does not need to come forward to express his attitude. If we take action, the world government may back down. That's also a temporary concession. It is related to Lord Loya's plan. We can't do anything to the world government after all." Ulysses knew what he was thinking, and sighed, "When they're sure of this, what's supposed to come will come." Hearing the conversation between the two, Chingzi sighed heavily with a hint of disappointment. "Perhaps, now I have to pretend to submit and wait for Loya to wake up and then plan again. This is the last choice, and the dumbest decision. Once they surrender, the next step is a whole set of skillful exchange moves." When Loya woke up from an uncertain time, the one who was reborn was not the naval headquarters he needed. "Don't worry, they will only keep testing in a short period of time." Robin, who has been acting as a bystander, comforted him at this time. "When the time comes, I will let Ulysses lead the troops to make arrangements. I believe it can also be dragged on. For a while. It can only be so." Aokiji nodded, looking at Robin, who was getting more and more imposing in the main seat. Suddenly a trace of nostalgia flashed on his face, and he was very emotional. "You know. Actually, after you left O'Hara, I have been sending someone to monitor you. The whereabouts of you. I still remember your eyes full of fear and unwillingness when you were a child. I didn't expect that I can have a peaceful conversation in front of you now." Before Chingzi finished speaking, Robin smiled sweetly and rolled up the blue silk hanging from his ears. With recollection in her eyes, she looked at the sea outside the window. "The sea is a good place to exercise people, and everything will change." Startled for a while, Chingzi said silently, "Yeah. Everything will change." Just as the few people were quiet, a hurried report came from outside the door. After receiving a response, the undead soldier pushed the door and entered, then trotted to Robin and knelt down. "Master Robin, urgent report from the spy from the Navy headquarters." Seeing this scene, Aokiji's eyes widened. "There are no undead in the Navy, you actually have living spies." "It's just what the situation needs." Robin waved his hand calmly, picked up the information, and immediately stopped laughing. Nani? Sengoku was assassinated. Chapter 648 The Purpose of Sengoku. Naval Headquarters, Marineford. Aokiji, who rushed back quickly, was led by the crane to a very secluded room. When he opened the door, Aokiji's hands were shaking, and he managed to restrain himself. Pushing open the door, what you see is a white statue of a saint. She represents the gods and leads every lost soul. If the soul of Sengoku is really lost, it might be useful. It's a church, with a narrow door, but a spacious interior with neat copper-colored wooden chairs on the left and right. On the frontmost platform, there is a black coffin. The coffin has not been closed, so Aokiji can see the old man lying down at a glance. Seeing him coming in, Kizaru, who had been staying here for a while, and the new generals Fujitora and Midori saluted together. Marshal. Yeah. Nodding, Aokiji took a deep breath and asked, cause of death. Murderer. A violent poison. When the body was found, it was already 3 hours after death. Crane gave the answer that Aokiji wanted. Sengoku found it in his dinner last night. The remaining poison, I have all the relevant personnel under control, and it is estimated that I will receive the results later. What a joke. The green pheasant suddenly roared. Is his ability still unable to distinguish poison in the food? Even if it is really poisoned, he is transformed into a Buddha shape, and no poison can be removed. Hearing this, the rest of the group took a deep breath. Marshal, could it be that old Marshal Sengoku? Suicide. The crane's eyes were a little dim, and he sat down on the chair. I should have thought of it earlier, all this is too coincidental. In the top battle 2 months ago, Sengoku directly pulled Ace to block the sword for himself, which made the soldiers chill. Also a wise general, she doesn't believe that Sengoku can't see it. Originally, she thought that Sengoku would later abdicate as a guilt, and it would not endanger her life, so she never struggled too much. But then, Akainu's departure made her very busy, and she paid less attention to Sengoku. It turned out that it was all Sengoku's plan. Aokiji squinted his eyes and continued to ask, then what? Is the news blocked? The insiders are all under control, except for the 5 of us. There was no notification from Zephyr and Carp. I see. Aokiji glanced at Fujitora, waved his cloak, turned and walked out. Get ready. The war has begun. Sure enough, a few days later, the group of generals who followed Akainu to marry Joa spoke the same voice and told a shattering secret. It turned out that they not only disliked what Aokiji did and left the navy, but also forced Sengoku to step down because Aokiji wanted to be in power. When they left, it was because Akainu heard the news that Aokiji wanted to solve the hidden danger of Sengoku forever and use poison to kill it. Thinking of his past frictions with Aokiji, Akainu was worried that the next one would be he himself led the members of the Hawks out of the navy and came to the world government to seek asylum. This time, with the help of the world government, the news was flying all over the sky and quickly spread to the sea. Suddenly, the whole world was in an uproar. Everyone stared blankly at the distant naval headquarters. A kind of psychology called despair spread in the hearts of countless civilians. Why? What's wrong with this world? Why did the Navy, who maintained the stability of the sea in the past, the righteous guard they believed in, turned out to have such a face? Sengoku's use of Ace as a shield in the top war has not yet passed, and now there is a case of the new Navy Marshal poisoning and killing the old Marshal, so the word, Navy, can still be trusted. The distress of the common people is the happiness of the pirates. They laughed loudly and scolded the guys who chased them in the past. On Turtle Island, upon receiving the latest information, Simon and Ulysses looked at each other and felt an unspeakable horror. The Buddhist Sengoku has finally reached this point. Hey, don't you two stay in a daze. What's the situation now? Although K. Rockdale is a hero, in terms of IQ alone, the two in front of him are the objects that he can't beat. That expression properly saw something, but in the end he didn't say anything, but he was anxious. The same is true for the rest of the people, frowning and thinking about the hidden meaning. But this does not include Arudo and Perona, who are sitting on the sofa. Arudo is like a servant to Perona who is inconvenient to contact the entity flipbook. Hearing Rockdale's words, Simon nodded to Ulysses, and reached an agreement quietly. Cough cough. After coughing twice, Ulysses turned to face them and said, "What I told you before is true, Sengoku committed suicide. But, now the world government is cooperating with Akainu and the others, and insists that Sengoku was killed by blue dogs. Killed by the pheasant. Akainu is in a weak position and needs to rely on the enemy world government, which has broken with the Navy, as a shelter. If you are an ordinary person who does not know the inside story, what would you think?" "I would think," What Akainu said was true. Rockdale raised his eyebrows and took off his cigar. In this way, the world government will have the righteousness to directly attack the Navy. If we do it, we will be infatuated with covering up the villains. As a result, Turtle Island will become a real one. Evil forces are not qualified to maintain world peace. Tisk tisk, so it is. I have to say, the old guy Sengoku will find reasons more than when I was planning to steal the country before. Ha ha. Simon rolled the eyes of the dead fish and muttered in his heart, it's so foolish to fool. But this situation is exactly what they need, so they took the conversation and said, not only that. Because Aokiji distrusts the world, there will be more and more guys who don't trust the Navy. At the same time, those pirates will also seize the opportunity to take advantage of the chaos. Quote. Aren't they afraid of us sending out a large army? Aldo asked blankly. Our strength is now all over the Great Route. If we do our best, which pirate group can stop it? That's what he wants. Simon continued. Even if we want the face and won't intervene in this war, Sengoku still won't rest assured that we don't have the energy to intervene. Just ask, when the people no longer trust the Navy, how will they seek protection? Us. Speaking of this, no matter how stupid Aludo was, he understood. Now this situation can be said to be a complaint from the people, and it is absolutely difficult for the people to believe in a pirate-like green pheasant. At this time, it was precisely because of their previous layout that most of the naval bases of the Great Route became the garrison of the undead army. The Navy who lost their trust in the past, their relying objects are only the ones who look very good. Horrible undead army. But how vast is the sea? If the Navy is not trusted for a day, they will be in charge of each other's area for a day. As a result, most of Turtle Island's energy will be involved in maintaining law and order, and there is simply no time to manage the army of the world government. Of course, there is another solution, that is, regardless of the life or death of civilians, only confront the world government. But, is it possible? Chapter 649 The Red Dog Forced the Palace. In the hall, Robin took the report submitted by Simon and read it carefully. After a long time, she nodded, took out the dragon scale talisman that only she and Roha would not be frostbitten, and stamped a mark on the corner of the report. Just do as you plan, peace is more important than the Navy. Yes. A row of people saluted neatly, and then quietly backed out. This is a conspiracy of Yuhi Guago, using potential to deceive people, using the group of pirates that should be damned to force Turtle Island out of the fight. In the past 2 days, more than a dozen rumors of destroying the country gathered in Robin's hands, and the group of pirates who were full of hope because of the despair of the civilians suddenly broke out, burning, killing, kidnapping, and tyranny. Among those countries, some people may indeed still believe in the Navy, and they are also calling for rescue as soon as the turmoil occurs. But the pirates are at the door of the house, there are many turmoil locations, and the Navy is too busy. If this continues, the Great Route may become very peaceful, because everyone is almost dead. So Turtle Island must take action to maintain law and order. In this action, except for Ulysses, who is still guarding Turtle Island, and Jones, who is monitoring Fishman Island, all the rest of the cadres were dispatched. As for the New World, nowadays, no one dares to run wild in the realm of the 4 emperors and 1 emperor. That is not killing, but courting death. After they left, counting the time, Robin pulled out a phone bug. As soon as she took it out, the phone bug blew up. Tell me, what's the matter? So mysterious. In the report just now, Robin, an archaeologist, easily deciphered the secret code hidden in the text. At this moment, Ulysses had come to tell her that. This time, we owe a big favor. Ulysses straight to the point. It seems that Turtle Island has been allocated its energy, and it is true that it cannot interfere with the forces of the world government. But after this, we are the ultimate beneficiaries. The corners of his mouth twitched, and Robin said helplessly, is it Loya's plan again? Half and half. Ulysses was a little funny. He knew how much pressure Roja's foresight put on Robin. He was clearly the head Jinchuriki column in the plan of the 7 martial pirates, but he didn't expect that after getting to know Roha, he became a foil. This is a bit of a blow to the intelligent Robin. The world government believes that we are a group of dead people after all, and there is a difference between life and death of the common people. Even if the people's hearts are temporarily won this time, when they free up their hands after solving the naval problem, the world will still be theirs. After a pause to give Robin time to think carefully, Ulysses continued, however, Lord Loya's only rearguard is here. Quote, The sheep will only follow the lead sheep. As long as the large army does not stop, even if the abyss is in front of them, they will jump down one by one. Humans are actually a group of relatively smart lambs. This is what Lord Loya told my. As intelligent as Robin, he immediately understood. You mean silenced army. Dorag is powerful now, and the idea of the silenced army is quite popular in this world. Even the world government has to admit that he is a saint who is dedicated to the people. Ulysses said with emotion. So he attitude, even if it doesn't change the deep-rooted difference between life and death in people's hearts, it can make people trust us. Quote. By that time, whether it's the Navy or the world government, don't even think about surpassing our prestige among the grassroots. It was so. No wonder he's so obsessed with such a weak, silencer army. If only words can change the world, why does Loya practice so hard? But Robin also has to admit that the innate advantage of the silencer army is too great for prestige. This is all due to the mess left by the Tianlong people in the past hundreds of years, so this is also considered. They shot themselves in the foot. Then, there's no need to hide this from them, right? Robin continued to ask. And even if we don't talk about it, the old foxes of the Weston family in the Navy will probably smell something wrong. What if they make peace with the world government? What the Weston family won't say. One is the world government, which makes the whole family suffer from infamy, and the other is Turtle Island, which can clean up their injustices. It is because they are very smart, so they are even less so. Ulysses smiled and said, in fact, Simon's uncle, Mr. Guyen, contacted us before, and if he interfered with it, I believe that neither the Navy nor the world government will find any problems. As for the reason for hiding it from them, we can all have Admiral Fujitora as our inner responder, wouldn't the Navy not have one? Robin's fingers shrank unnaturally, and his face was cold. Do you have a goal? Not now, but soon. On March 15, 1521 in the Haiyuan calendar, 8 o'clock in the morning. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, the division of the King of Diligence, of the world government finally arrived at the naval headquarters. Standing on the warship at the forefront as the biggest sufferer of this incident, the former admiral of the Navy headquarters, Red Dog, Sakaski. Looking at the neatly arranged soldiers and cannons on the square in front, Akainu shouted with tears in his eyes, brothers. Comrades, don't take up arms. You are protecting a guy who is more sinister and vicious than the most vicious pirates. He forced Marshal Sengoku to abdicate and took the position of Admiral of the Navy. And afterward, he poisoned and killed Marshal Sengoku. Such a guy, know it's worth your hard work. Clap lala. The crowd was noisy. Although I always heard from the outside world that Aokiji poisoned Sengoku, I didn't dare to talk about it. This time, in the face of Akainu's moving speech, this curiosity and anxiety could no longer be restrained, and they started talking. At a time like this, even Aokiji can't say anything, because the extremes are the opposite, and once he tells the soldiers to shut up, he will admit that he has a ghost in his heart. After all, Akainu's acting is so good. On the 21st floor of the fortress, Aokiji clapped expressionlessly. Why didn't I find out before that the extreme Akainu still has such acting skills? When needed, I can even squeeze out 2 tears. The tear of crocodile. It's changed. It's changed. Hey, the crane is now much older than the original, dying and lifeless. She looked at Akainu who kept talking on the warship and waved her hand. Marshal, please allow me to retire after this incident. Ms. Crane, what does this mean? The Navy is swaying now, and I have just stepped into my seat. It is precisely the guidance of a resourceful senior like you. Enough, Aokiji. Crane suddenly raised the volume and looked at him seriously. You can fool that idiot Zephyr, do you still expect to fool me and Sengoku? Aokiji was silent, no longer speaking. After a moment of silence, the crane continued. Kazuna is too slick and Akainu is too extreme, and they are not handsome talents. I can rest assured that the Navy will be handed over to you. As he spoke, Crane walked out. This is the era of your young people, so let go and do it. Ms. Crane. Looking at the closed door, Aokiji bent down slightly and bowed sincerely. Chapter 650 The Chaos Begins. 3rd. In the square, the soldiers were gradually shaken by Akainu's speech. Could it be that Marshal Chingzi really did those things? How is that possible? We don't know what kind of person Marshal Chingzi is. That's right, Admiral Akainu even killed his own soldiers before, we can't trust him. But it's too coincidental. With the ability of the old Marshal Sengoku, ordinary people can harm him. For a time, the Navy talked a lot, not knowing whether the fight should continue. At this time, Akainu waved his hand, motioning the soldiers and fleet behind him to stay still, standing alone on the shore of the port. Faced with being surrounded by countless enemies, he opened his hands and posed to embrace the sun, one-handed version. JPG. Every word I say is true. If you don't believe me, my life is here for you to take. To go, or not to go, that is the question. Seeing Akainu's statement, a soldier bit Kiba, rushed up, and stabbed it out. Laugh. However, Akainu really put his life there. As he said, not only did he not fight back, but he also let the knife penetrate his belly without even using elementalization. This time, even the general, he was not lightly injured. With blood hanging from the corner of his mouth, Akainu looked at the soldiers in front of him and said loudly, "What else?" "I'm coming." A major general stood up and took out his weapon. "It's not that I don't believe you, General Akainu. This sword is for the younger brother who was killed by you. Just because he pleaded for the pirates, you killed him. The Navy can't bow to criminals. Your brother has violated the bottom line." Akainu roared with his eyes wide open, then continued to open his hands. "If you hate me, then come on. I will never resist." What Akainu said is true. The Navy has regulations that sheltering prisoners as a Navy is a serious crime, and it is undoubtedly much more merciful to be executed on the spot than to be sent to the hell-like Push City in the future to suffer and die in it. Biting Kiba, the Major General still handed out the weapon in his hand. But he was obviously shaken. This knife not only left a little force, but also aimed at Akainu's belly. Wow! The Major General's attack was not so pleasant. The breath of the knife rolled in Akainu's body, and even he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Wiping the corner of his mouth with his sleeve, Akainu didn't even look at the Major General, and continued to stare at the soldier in front of him. What else? Next. The world government wants to take back the trump card of the Navy. Of course, it is not just the meaning of the 5 old stars, but the meaning of the Antonio family is the top priority. Akainu was only the one they sent to block the sword and occupy the righteousness. The real commander of this operation was the eldest son of the Antonio family, Antonio Silla. 2 swords, his strength has gone to 30%, is he still not doing it? On a steel warship, Shinluo sat alone in the command room, using a phone bug to communicate with someone. The wound on his severed arm was aching faintly, and he seemed to recall the scene where half of his body was frozen by Aokiji's move that day. At that time, they were not allies, and under their respective battles, naturally you would live and die. Shaking his head, Silla shook off his mixed thoughts and continued to ask, "Are you sure your cards can turn the tide of the battle?" Sengoku didn't leave any clues. Sengoku wants the Navy to return to the world government but dare not offend Loya. With his wisdom, there will be no omissions for them to follow. Even suicide is something that Aokiji conjectured. After listening to Silla's words, Aokiji shook his head and said, "No hurry. Akainu still has the strength to resist. I will give him a fatal blow after he can't resist at all. Gambling is such a thing. As a leader, you can't get half a point. Then wait for your good news. I'm going to do it here, you can figure it out. After speaking, Scylla hung up the phone. Looking through the window, the soldiers on Malenford were like ants in his eyes. Weak and humble. As expected, it's your butt that decides your head. You were not such a cold-blooded guy before. On the battlefield, Akainu has gradually reached the center of the square. Surrounded by sharp knives, on the surface, he was extremely calm and righteous, but in his heart, he had already cursed Aokiji with blood. This bastard hasn't come out yet. Does he really want the Navy to kill each other? In order to get here, he had 5 more holes and 17 or 8 bloodstains on his body. Even if only 1% of the remaining soldiers didn't believe him, that would be enough to kill him. As for whether the soldiers will rebel afterward, what does it have to do with him being a dead man? So, Akainu decided not to continue. Behind him, the wavering soldiers have gathered more and more, slowly aiming their weapons at their former colleagues. And this trend is still growing, and will soon surpass the soldiers of the other side. Continue like this, Akainu and the world government will take down the Navy headquarters without a single soldier. Well, of course, provided the Akainu doesn't bleed to death. Step by step on the blood mark, Akainu stepped onto the high platform. Taking a deep breath, Akainu shouted loudly, "Aokiji, come out and face me." Crack clap. An ice ladder extended from the top of the fortress and rested on the edge of the high platform. Under the watchful eyes of countless soldiers, Aokiji walked slowly. "Are you looking for me, Admiral Akainu?" "Humph. Today I am here to seek justice for Marshal Sengoku. You forced Marshal Sengoku to abdicate, and later poisoned him. I'll settle this account with you." "Oh, and then?" Aokiji still had that fluffy hair. After listening to Akainu's words, he hit Heish. "Justice is in the heart of the heart. Just based on your past actions, do you think they will believe it?" "Why don't you believe it? It's true." In the past, Akainu wouldn't talk nonsense with Aokiji, but now that he is seriously injured, he may not be Aokiji's opponent. Thinking of this, Akainu pointed to the soldiers behind him. "You said I lied, so how do you explain it to them?" "There's nothing to explain, I can't come up with the evidence." "But General Akainu," Aokiji clasped his head and said lazily, "since you said that I did all this, then you can bring out the evidence. Our Navy is not a pirate, we need to talk about evidence and law." "What do you do with so much nonsense? Kill Aokiji and avenge Marshal Sengoku." Suddenly, such a voice came from the soldiers behind Akainu. At the same time, after a gunshot, one of the soldiers who remained unmoved suddenly fell down, clutching his chest with a worried expression. "Be careful." They fired. "Protect the Marshal. Kill these traitors." With the help of some secretly buried chess pieces, the soldiers on both sides, who were already nervous and tense, immediately moved their hands. The current situation is that even if they don't do it themselves, the other party will destroy them. So wrapped up, the two sides began to fight. And Akainu smiled coldly and punched Aokiji with a punch. His mouth was still shouting when he started. "No, they're going to kill us." "Geez, that's true." In this regard, Chingzi sighed, and a strong cold air came from his body, and he punched it. Chapter 651 Soldiers Never Tire of Cheating. Go. On the steel warship, Scylla looked at the two sides fighting, and gave an order indifferently. Shish. Bang. The warship opened fire and landed in the most densely populated areas, and countless severed limbs were thrown away, leaving Mukuro everywhere. Being attacked by the opponent, the Navy who were still in a daze quickly responded with artillery fire. But some, smart people, also thought of this, killed the gunner, grabbed the gun, and aimed at other forts. For a while, the chaos started. Violent pheasant mouth. The blue ice bird whizzed past and hit Akainu's hot lava dog. The battle between Aokiji and Akainu has its own destiny, and it is also unavoidable. But with one hand missing and so many knives on his body, Akainu is definitely not the opponent of Aokiji at this moment, and he was beaten and defeated in a short while. Seeing this, Akainu suddenly rushed to the void and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Help me kill him." Cuckoo. The next moment, a figure suddenly appeared in that position, the spear held in his hand stretched forward, and reached the back of Qingzi's head from a position more than 10 meters away. The sharp edge made the green pheasant's scalp numb, and a strong death crisis rushed to the forehead. A teleportation fruit person. At the critical moment, Aokiji took off sideways, spinning in the air like a spinning top, dodging the fatal attack. Bang! Seizing this opportunity, Akainu kicked out, and even if Aokiji blocked it with his hand, he was kicked and flew into the distance. But at this moment, the man hiding in the dark reluctantly stabbed again. Click! The ice wall that rose from the ground blocked the oncoming attack. Aokiji coughed twice and stood up from the ruins. The brainwashed guy is really hard to deal with. He only knows to obey orders, and he is not afraid of getting hurt. In the distance, Atalanta stared at his unfocused eyes and raised his weapon again. Ding! The sharp spear pierced the ground under the Aokiji's feet, leaving a large cobweb pit. On the other side, Akainu also attacked simultaneously. Two general-level opponents joined forces to attack, and Aokiji suddenly fell into a dangerous situation. However, this way Aokiji can also be sure of one thing. That is the power that Akainu has left now. It is really not enough to be an enemy of himself. Then, it's time to start. The phone bug never hung up. Aokiji said this sentence directly at this moment, and Scylla received it immediately. Atalanta, change the target, kill Akainu. Cuckoo. The next moment, the spear that had been stabbing Aokiji stopped, and the tip of the Halu stone spear slashed in front of Aokiji's eyes, then turned abruptly, leaving a long bloodstain on Akainu's face. Eyes widened in surprise, Akainu fell into extreme shock. What are you doing? He is the enemy. Wait, I get it. Suddenly, Akainu responded quickly. You and Sheila are in the same group. He betrayed his father. In this regard, Aokiji smiled slightly, and the double-ridged spear shot out. That's right, but unfortunately there is no reward. Damn, you are all dead. Mr. Carlo will not allow others to betray him. Not even his son. Akainu yelled frantically, and the lava seemed to be consuming no energy. Of course, this is not to vent, but to block the line of sight and find an opportunity to escape. He doesn't carry a phone bug with him like Aokiji. All actions are directed by Scylla. As long as he doesn't want to, Akainu has no way to contact Carlo. So he has to run away and bring this news back. At that time, with the help of Carlo's power, these two bastards who calculated him will be eliminated. It's dead. Who knows? However, it's a soldier who never tires of deceit, General Akainu. You. Puff. The spear completely ignored the scorching magma, and in front of the teleportation ability, Akainu's defense seemed a bit ridiculous. The spear passed through Akainu's chest. He didn't cry out in pain. Instead, he bit Kiba, stretched out his hand to hold the spear, and the billowing lava covered it, almost instantly burning the sharp spear stick. In order to fight better, Atalanta's spear only has the front end of the spear made of Halu stone, which is the greatest threat to Akainu. The rest, facing Akainu's lava, is not much harder than butter. Aokiji's attack couldn't penetrate due to the blocking of magma, and his attributes were restrained, so he had no good way. At this moment, after a hard bite, Akainu stepped on the ground in an instant, like a dragon rushing out of the encirclement and running towards the crowd. Where to escape? Seeing this, Aokiji's ready-to-go ice bird roared angrily and charged straight towards Akainu. Damn it, so many soldiers here. Akainu's ruthlessness shocked Akainu for the first time. This kind of disregard for soldiers, casualties was something that only he would do in the past. Boom. Crash. This time, the violent pheasant mouth has been gaining momentum for a long time, and its power is incomparable. Before the frozen soldier lost consciousness, it was shattered into pieces by the roar that followed. Sheila's attitude can't be revealed yet. These potential witnesses must die. As the center point, Akainu was directly frozen with a leg, half of the body was covered with thick ice, and it rolled and flew out. He opened his mouth and spit out a piece of ice slag, mustering his strength, and Akainu shouted loudly, "Be careful. Sheila is." Puff. A figure suddenly appeared beside him. The spear without the head sank into his neck, and the word, "traitor," was firmly stuck in his throat. "Who says you can't stab someone without a gun?" Holding Atlant's burnt spear with one hand, the Aokiji who was sent over did not know how famous he said a line. Strength. Whoa. Release the spear. Aokiji condensed an ice saber and cut off Akainu's head. Taking a deep breath, Aokiji shouted loudly, "Akainu is dead. Stop fighting." Suddenly, the entire battlefield fell silent. Countless eyes focused on Aokiji, and then looked at the head that he was holding in his hand, and it was the dead Akainu who could no longer die. Akainu, dead. So shall we continue? The soldiers were lost, not knowing what to do next. At this moment, a figure familiar to all navies appeared on the high platform and shouted, "Enough. I have found out the truth." Lieutenant General Crane. Beside her, that's Lieutenant General Ghost Spider. As a veteran lieutenant general, whether it is a Crane or a Ghost Spider, he is a big man familiar to the soldiers. They appeared on the stage and stated that, the truth has been found out, and immediately attracted everyone's attention from Aokiji. What is the truth? What are we fighting for? Countless soldiers are full of questions and want to get an answer. In the distance, on the steel warship, Shinluo said with admiration, "So that's the case. It is indeed a powerful trump card. But this way, it seems that I can clear my suspicions again." After speaking, Scylla gave the order, "Retreat." The operation failed. Yes. The steering of the steel fleet made those chess pieces feel a chill, and when the flying squirrels came to subdue the troublemakers, they all stopped their small movements. At this moment, Crane's hunched body was like a stubborn rock, firm and unyielding. Facing the countless soldiers, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "My fruit ability can wash away the evil in people's hearts and make people's evil weaker. Everyone knows this." Seeing the soldiers nodding, Crane continued, "Just now, Marshal Aokiji delayed the time so that I could have time to cleanse my mind for Vice Admiral Ghost Spider. Now, Vice Admiral Ghost Spider, tell Akainu about what you've told you, and say it out loud." Out. Yes. After being purged, Ghost Spider was no longer as irritable as before. He knew very well that he couldn't betray Akainu, but because his evil heart was gone, he couldn't tolerate such crimes being concealed even more. So, he stood on the stage and said loudly, "The poison that Marshal Sengoku was poisoned was obtained by Akainu from the agents of the world government, and it was also his conspiracy for the position of admiral. Marshal Pheasant has nothing to do." For a time, the audience was shocked. Chapter 652 for the Great King. The crisis facing the Navy was resolved in a way no one could understand. In the eyes of the world, including Carlo who made this plan, even if Akainu fails in the end, the Navy will suffer heavy losses due to the cannibalistic infighting. After the Battle of the Top, the Battle of Chihei and this internal battle, the heritage accumulated during the conscription period was exhausted. Without enough combat power, the world government doesn't really care if the Navy returns or not. All he wants is a useless Navy that will help them rule the world. However, for the first time since taking power, Carlo has the illusion of being out of hand. This operation not only failed to achieve the expected results, but made the Navy more solid, and almost cut off the expectation of friendly exchanges with the world government. It was completely his own hand, who sent such a huge combat power group of the Navy to Loya's subordinates. And it's not over yet. Almost when he just suppressed his anger, another message reached his ears. The Legion of the Undead went to sea to suppress the pirate riots this time, and took this opportunity to gain a firm foothold on the huge number of islands. This time, a total of 13 allied countries have boldly applied to withdraw and accepted the protection of the Undead Army. In other words, they crossed the insurmountable line between the dead and the living, making the world truly accept such skeleton monsters. And all the arrangements they made, not only did not have the effect of preventing it, but instead made the world lose confidence in the world government. Through intelligence, Carlo knew that all this was caused by the leader of the Silencer army, the traitor Drago. Trash, trash, trash. In the hall, Carlo cursed 3 times in a row, expressing how angry he is now. The people below all shrank their heads and did not dare to look up. After all, this time, they really lost a lot of money. But even with the same fire, he had to accept Carlo's anger first. No one would have imagined that the green pheasant would capture the ghost spider in advance, and let the crane wash his heart for him, revealing all their plans. Otherwise, even if a kainu fails and the fight is forcibly stopped, this matter can plant a seed of suspicion in the Navy. Use it well, it will be a time bomb in the future. But the crane's ability is too well known. As the Navy's signature skill, the ghost spider after being washed by her can easily gain everyone's trust and directly kill the last chance. So, here comes the question. How did the ghost spider detained in Marijoa get sent out without Carlo's knowledge? Green pheasant. He doesn't have that much face. 5 old stars. The ability is there, but it won't do it. So. Sheila. After his rage, Carlo murmured the name. However, this suspicion was quickly rejected by him. Scylla knows Number Zero's ability very well. As long as he brings him for a first interrogation, Scylla cannot hide any secrets. After all, he is his own son, the heir who is valued by him. Carlo knows Scylla's wisdom very well. Such a huge loophole will definitely not be left. So, who will it be? Loya. Dorag. This mystery will stay with Carlo until his death. After a pause, Carlo looked coldly at the crowd below, and the cold air swirled in the hall. You all know Antonio's rules, failure is failure, and accept the punishment yourself. Hearing this, a few people in the crowd instantly felt chills, but they didn't dare to resist. They bowed their heads and said, yes. Turtle Island, Loya's room. The Navy matter was resolved, and the undead army was considered to have completely replaced the Navy to maintain order, and the situation was very good. But Turtle Island has been covered with dark clouds these days, and the mood of the people on the island has not improved much because of the news of the naval victory. The reason is nothing else, just because of Loya's body, there has been death energy. That's the death energy of the dead. Ulysses and they can't get it wrong. But at the same time, the vitality in Loya's body is still huge, as vast as the sea. Death and vitality coexist, and the two blend with each other, forming a very strange scene. Half of Loya's body gradually withered, leaving only a human skin on the outside. The other half of the body is plump and full, with strong muscles, and there is no abnormality. Such a strange scene naturally made everyone nervous. Ulysses put down all the chores and stayed by Loya's side 24 hours a day. As a blood lord, he has a very good understanding of the use of vitality, and is the only Death Knight who can transfer the vitality of living people to others. If Loya really needs vitality supplements, he can help immediately. Lord Robin, don't come to tidy up for Lord Loya these few days. Seeing Robin walk into the room, Ulysses waved a wall of blood to block it, and then said, the dead aura of Lord Loya is spreading. Except for the undead, any living person will be affected. You don't want Luoya Lordya woke up and found that you were injured, right? What's more, you were injured because of him. Okay, I get it. Staying in this room, Robin could clearly feel that she was getting weaker every second. Know that Ulysses is not lying. With a helpless sigh, Robin took the water basin and chose to leave silently. But at this moment, suddenly, a terrible aura burst out from Loya. Boom! The whole room was instantly destroyed by that breath, and a deep crack went up from the bottom up, covering the entire castle. Not good. Get out of here. Ulysses felt that the energy in his body was running wild, and his sanity was gradually disappearing. It was an unprecedented war frenzy, and even he couldn't resist it. With his last sanity, Ulysses waved Robin out of the room. Then, a roar suddenly sounded in place, like a beast. Roar. Not only Ulysses, but almost instantly, the undead on the entire island began to riot. They put down their tools one after another, stared at Yuhi's eyes, and screamed in the sky. What happened? Why did the undead run wild? Simon came quickly from a distance, and suddenly, several uncontrollable undead soldiers roared and charged straight towards him. Humph! Seeing this, Simon snorted coldly and threw out a silver-colored lightning bolt, tying up the undead. Then he bent his fingers, and with all his strength, he divided it into pieces of corpses of different sizes. In the distance, an undead was running towards Robin. Simon turned and jumped up, and with the strength of the rotation, a small silver-colored flying knife shot out. Bang! The flying knife is thrown out, as powerful as a cannonball. The undead soldier was not penetrated, but exploded directly on the spot. This is the flying knife stunt learned from Dr. Kurha. Even Roha was smashed into a hole on the ice wall by her. The power is not weak. Master Robin, please hurry to the shelter. Simon came to Robin with a shave and lifted her from the ground. But before the two could leave, the wall above their heads shattered in an instant, and then Ulysses Yuhi jumped down. With malicious eyes locked on the two of them, Ulysses roared, "For the great king!" Chapter 653 The promotion is back. Between the dreams, as time passed, Loya's screams gradually diminished. It's not that he suffered less and less torture, but that he was already numb. Like a salted fish, too lazy to resist. However, the power of the source of the shaking fruit gradually merged with his soul in the process, and a strange aura emanated from him, forming a black curtain around him, illuminating the surrounding light. All attracted. From a distance, it looks like someone has dug out a piece of this vast starry sky. In Ivy's words, this was after the shock fruit was fused with him, and he couldn't control the vibration that his power unintentionally radiated, shattering the surrounding space. The power that spills out is so powerful that it can't be controlled, so how terrible is the vibration that is completely controlled and exerted? Thinking of Whitebeard's methods of destroying the sky and destroying the earth, Loya is looking forward to the day when he takes control of the shock fruit. Of course, because of the integration, the golden dragon that could have closed his eyes and rested at this moment was I have to watch him all the time to prevent the vibrations on his body from getting bigger and bigger and affecting the operation of dreams. On the other hand, with the help of Ivy's constant smashing and looting, the golden gate representing the world of One Piece became more and more solid, and gradually became real from an illusory phantom. This is a very strange feeling. Obviously there is no difference in appearance, but the door gives people a transition from dream to reality, from untouchable to within reach. Of course, this is also due to the countless small worlds that were sacrificed. It was their selfless sacrifice that allowed the One Piece world to gather a large enough source of power. Loya remembered that some of the small worlds were even smashed 2 or 3 times, and they were often taken down by Ivy just after they were recondensed. If you want to blame it, you have to blame you for being the fandom world of One Piece, the closest to her. I don't know how much time has passed. Ivy finally stopped, looked at the Golden Gate with satisfaction, and let out a long sigh of relief. Very good. The energy is enough. As long as you complete the fusion, you can proceed to the last step. By the way, what's the last step? How can I return my current power to my body? The current Loya's breath has skyrocketed countless times than when he first came. From an ordinary person, he has fully reached the stage of an old white beard. The more powerful the power represents, the more powerful restrictions. The previous One Piece world can no longer accommodate him. Isn't it even worse now? It's just to go back. That's why I worked so hard to help the world advance. Ivy sat next to Loya and moved the cracks around him with interest. At the same time, it revealed a very thoughtful term, world promotion. Illusions have a limit, but this limit is not fixed. On the contrary, their growth is beyond the imagination of mortals, and even reaches an unreasonable level. This question, the Golden Dragon felt that he was better at it, so he explained, when you first showed the power to touch the limit, Ivy sent me a request to promote the illusion. But you were still too weak at that time. If the world is promoted directly, there will be no benefit other than the direct awakening of the two parts of the body. But now it's different, your power is strong enough. Oh, I understand. Luoya still understands the metaphysical thing of world promotion, just like the upper limit of the level of online games. In the past, he had exerted the power of a full level number, but he himself was not full level. Later, as the degree of fusion deepened, he reached the full level, even surpassing the first level, so he was cleared by the system as a bug. And now what Ivy is doing is developing a new version and raising the level cap. His current max level +1 is naturally in line with the rules, and he can safely return to his body. It's just that the way of promotion in this world is really simple and rude. It's a fantasy world after all, just get used to it. The golden dragon so comforted. A few days later, with countless stars shattering, Loya finally completed the absorption of the shaking fruit. The feeling of being full of power is back, and a slight fist clench can tear the space in the palm of your hand. Such a powerful force. Let Loya have the illusion that I am God. The reason why it was an illusion was because he still couldn't see through the ivy and the golden dragon in front of him. Seeing Ivy doing the final preparations, Roha asked curiously, "Speaking of which, what is the level of your crazy body? How does it compare to mine?" "Well, that's the question." Ivy frowned and thought for a while, then said, "You still remember World of Warcraft, right?" "Well, of course. It doesn't matter if you were a human or a goblin, obeying a king or a chief, you will be the queen after you die." "Hee hee, man." Ivy looked disdainful, and then said, "For example, the upper limit of the level in the One Piece world was level 80. You are level 81, playing ICC in the LK version, and wrestling with two fools. And half of his body is already level 90, and he still exists in the MOP version to play heads up with Shah of Anger." That's a shit. I applied to stay. Loya was instantly stunned and decided to quit. 81 and level 90 are two different concepts in World of Warcraft. A turtle in the pond in front of other people's Pandorans house is equivalent to 1/10 of a Lady Deathwhisper. Look at your useless appearance. Ivy looked at Loya contemptuously, but in order to stabilize him, she added, "You forgot that your body is the body of my other half-dragon." "Huh, right. How many levels am I in that total?" Loya looked happy and asked expectantly. "Probably. It's also level 90. It depends on how well you integrate yourself. If you can fully utilize the power of that dragon's body, you'll be level 90. "Understood. Don't worry, I will complete the task." Hearing that he is also such a powerful existence, Loya stood up with a smile, and couldn't see the cowardly look just now. At this time, Ivy had put the last gate in, and the world of One Piece suddenly shook, emitting endless golden light. The promotion of the world is not only good for itself, but Ivy, who is a helper, also benefits a lot. To paraphrase the fantasy, the merit is boundless. A mysterious mark appeared on Ivy's forehead, indicating that she has the ability to freely enter and leave the world of One Piece. Looking at Loya, who was full of fighting spirit in his eyes, Ivy bent down and stretched out his hand. "Funny, Master, please go on the road." "Well, no gift." Loya swaggered over and walked over, stepping into the door with one foot. This time the golden door didn't respond, and it flickered to accommodate him. After he left, the golden dragon silently complained, "So, are you sure you won't tell him that others are boss templates and he's just a player? Trust him. That's my son." Ivy's face was full of confidence, and she stepped into the door with a smile. Before leaving, Ivy suddenly turned around and said seriously to the golden dragon, "Then, goodbye." "Yeah, bye-bye." The door slowly closed, and in the empty dreamland, there was only one golden dragon left, just like he always did. Chapter 654 The World Moves. End of volume. The screen flashed, and Loya's consciousness returned to the body. Originally, today, he was very happy, but the scene that appeared in front of him made him stunned. "What's the situation?" Has anyone hit Turtle Island? The Turtle Island in front of me has been urgently separated, and it is divided into several pieces, large and small, floating on the sea. At this moment, he stood on the top of the largest ruins, looking down at the undead who were roaring constantly below. Seemingly strange to his appearance, the group of undead suddenly stood there and turned to look at him. Well, it seems that I came back in time. Suddenly, Ivy's voice rang in his ear, and Loya immediately felt a mass of consciousness emerge in his mind, revealing Ivy's appearance. You know what's going on. Ivy was closely related to him, living in this body as before. So Loya was only surprised for a second, and then asked naturally. The promotion of the world is a difficult and complicated process in our eyes, but for the world itself, it is only a momentary thing. No, in fact, I don't think it is difficult and complicated. Loya complained silently in his heart, and in a trance, he saw the female man who fell over his shoulder again. Ivy didn't know what he was thinking in his subconscious mind, and continued to explain. After the world is promoted, the things that were restricted in the past will become reasonable. The power will be strengthened, and the creatures will wake up immediately. For example, that half of the dragon's body. For example, this half of your dragon's body. So, that's what I did. Loya looked confused and pointed to his nose. Otherwise, that's why I said it's still in time. Ivy comforted him. Don't worry, my mother's daughter-in-law is still alive. Hurry up and wake up these irrational undead. Okay, I see. Loya nodded, frowning at the group of undead whose reason was eroded by the frenzy of war. The magic power suddenly soared, and the abundant power made Loya almost out of control. The skyrocketing soul brings a powerful increase. The flesh and the soul complement each other, making Loya's magic more powerful. After finally controlling the power, Loya raised his hand, and an ice blue magic circle that covered the sky appeared in the sky. Then he suddenly pulled, and the magic circle was instantly depressed. Wake up. The magic circle has no effect on living people and objects, but simply relieves the abnormal state of mind. Because of its large range, it is commonly known as group dispersal. As soon as they were touched by the magic circle, the runaway undead immediately quieted down. They looked left and right, wondering what had just happened to them. However, a kind of spiritual guidance made them turn around and look at Loya standing at the top of the ruins. Whoa! There was a neat sound of kneeling, and countless undead lay on the ground, bowing their heads to their masters. Loya used the half-baked vibration ability to expand the transmission of the voice, as if from the gods in the sky. Come back. I have the situation under control. In the escape pod, Simon and the others, you look at me, I look at you, and nodded with a twitchy mouth. Boom, boom. The split Turtle Island squeezed out the waves and gathered together again, and Robin, who left the escape pod, rushed out immediately. Seeing her from a distance, Loya opened her hands shyly. Long time no see, wife. Come and hold one. Snapped. A slap slapped Loya on the head, but it shocked Robin for a while. Then she kicked out and kicked Loya to the ground. Finally, sit on Loya's stomach with a button bow left and right. The awakened Ulysses and the others knew why, especially Ulysses, the initiator, who had already retreated silently with Uhiti. Why hit me? The old lady almost died, you know. Robin pointed to the wound on his arm, and the hideous scar almost cut off her arm. Who did it? Who did it? Loya burst out suddenly, rubbing the mud on the back of his head, looking around. Wife, calm down, I'll teach him a lesson for you. Suddenly, the sharp-eyed Loya saw Ulysses, who took a small step back, and immediately shouted, Woo, that thief, stop and don't run. Swish. It's okay not to shout. As soon as he shouted, Ulysses tried his best to suck, exerting his speed to ultimate, and disappeared on the sea level in the blink of an eye. Don't worry, wife, he can't run away. I'll go and get him back. After all, Loya struggled to get up. However, Robin suddenly slapped his ear and stopped him from moving, with a sneer on his face. The undead can't resist your order. If you really forbid him to run, he will run. Being so close, Roja could smell the body fragrance on Robin's body, and rubbed his hands awkwardly. So many people are looking at my wife, don't do this. Still playing tricks, you bastard. When a woman is angry, don't think too much, just kiss her. However, it turns out that when a woman is really angry, you better apologize because kissing her doesn't work. Sniffling, Loya sat unnaturally on the ruins and asked, did something major happen while I was sleeping? Well, yes. Ulysses wasn't there, and it was Simon who made the report. Hearing Loya's question, Simon told what happened during this time. In summary, there are 3 big things. First, the Straw Hats disintegrated, and although Monkey D. Luffy was rescued, he disappeared. Loya knew where he went, but was too lazy to care. 2 years is enough for him to solve everything. Second, Blackbeard, Tiki took over Whitebeard's turf and became the new 4 emperors. This can only make Loya feel that the end of the timeline is irresistible. I didn't expect Luffy to go to the Navy headquarters without breaking into the city. The prisoners of LV.6 were released, and a more powerful Blackbeard pirates were formed. In the first half of the Great Route, countless large and small forces jointly controlled it, which maintained the stability on the surface. Now the main force of the undead army is fixed there, and it is completely insufficient for the Order to take over the New World, which also allows Tich to seize the opportunity to gain a firm foothold. After all, no matter how strong Roja is, he is still alone. The army of the undead army is limited by the first half. This new world is no smaller than the first half. The countless islands, big and small, need the 4 emperors to maintain stability. It's an opportunistic good guy. Loya sneered, temporarily revealing this one. The third is the reason why the army of the undead has almost completely controlled the first half of this time. The world government sent troops to the Navy headquarters. The world government suffered a big loss. In addition to the cheap Turtle Island, it also let the Silencer army move from behind the scenes to the front of the stage, officially becoming one of the major forces in the world. And because they helped the undead army win the hearts of the people, Drago held the title of Ice Emperor, and protected himself under all kinds of prying eyes. The Anti-World Government Alliance came into being, and the number of participating countries is more than the world government. Of course, the world government does not recognize the legitimacy of the other party. For this reason, the 2 sides have fought many times, and the fight is in full swing. However, neither side dared to cross that line. After playing a few times, I found that I couldn't take advantage of it, so I died, and chose to continue to accumulate strength and prepare to defeat the enemy with 1 shot. Dorag is a smart man, he knows what to do and what not to do, but Vegapunk. Thinking of the Pluto blueprint still in the safe, Loya knew it was time for him to act. Above, Simon finished the report and looked at Loya. Now that the pattern of the 4 emperors and 1 emperor has been decided, what should we do next? Nothing to do. Let me think about it. Report. At this time, a soldier ran over with a phone bug in his hand. Master. Just received a call. Beasts, Guy and Blackbeard, Tiki started a war. The target is the road sign held by the other party. Historical text. Isn't this what happened? Loya smiled slightly and said to Simon, pass my order, the army will start. Chapter 658 Sin Dragon Abyss. Holy Land, Mary Joa, the center of the world, the residence of the dragon people. This place is called the Holy Land because it is the place where the descendants of the Creator, the noble dragon people live. At the same time, this is also the power center of the world government, the most pinnacle of existence in the entire One Piece world. As a Holy Land, Mary Joa's central area has always been a mystery. Because even the building where the 5 old stars are located is just in the hinterland. But in the very center of the city, a towering tower that is not very beautiful stands here. The strange appearance of Madara's White Tower is incompatible with the surrounding luxurious mansions and neat layout. There are a few more cracks. No one knows what it is, but everyone knows who built it. Looking at now, only the heirs of the Antonio family can enter, the answer is obvious. With Shinluo, Carlo rushed over all the way. The entrance has been surrounded by a large army, blocking all civilians, high-ranking government officials and Tianlong people. The newly formed 5 old stars watched from a distance in the crowd, but also did not dare to take a step beyond the thunderous pool. Ignoring these old guys, Carlo asked in a low voice as he walked, "How serious is the situation?" "It's so serious that the whole city can be evacuated." Carlo took a deep breath, suppressed his anxiety, and came to the front of the tower. The expressionless guard crossed his spears and stopped the powerful man. "Please check." As he spoke, the man on the left separated his free hand, and with a few twists, it turned into a disc. These two people are obviously not human, but they give the impression that they are no different from real people. There are circles of dents in the disc, which outline some kind of mysterious totem. Dragon. Carlo didn't talk nonsense, took out a knife and swiped on his wrist, and Yuhi's blood dripped down his arm and landed in the dent. Soon, the blood soaked the disc, and a humming sounded slightly. The dragon's eyes were not connected to the groove, but immediately after the buzzing sound, a stream of blood poured out of the empty disc at that location. In the end, the entire giant dragon was stained with blood, and Carlo groaned, and there was a beautiful rune mark of Yuhi on his wrist. Test passed. A gleam of light flashed in the guard's eyes, and he continued to speak numbly. At the same time, he retracted his hand and exposed the passage. Upon seeing this, Carlo motioned for Shinluo to wait outside and stepped into the tower. Outside the crowd, surrounded by a bunch of guards, the 5 old stars talked secretly. "That's the rune mark that controlled Vegapunk." "Yes, except for the direct blood of the Antonio family. If the others go to test, they will only be enslaved by them like Vegapunk. So we haven't been able to detect the intelligence inside these years, but thinking about it, the gap shouldn't be big. Yeah, I guess I didn't run away." The King of Heaven. Walking into the tower, it is not as dark as outsiders imagined. Because here, blue-black magic crystals remain everywhere, and even the sky is reflected in a dark blue. Yin-yang light illuminates this place, no matter day or night, here is the same as always. Obviously only a door away, Carlo came from the Holy Land, Mary Joa to this place that does not exist in any corner of the world. A separate space. In the lingering wind and snow, several figures slowly approached. "It's all corrupted. What's the situation?" The walking posture of those figures was awkward, as if the joints were rusted. Carlo frowned, took a step forward, clasped his right hand into a claw, and swept past him. Dragon Martial Arts Dragon Claw. Chijin suddenly condensed together, and there was a trace of domineering blessing on it, making the invisible Chijin appear dark, as if it was really the claws of a giant dragon. Laugh. The approaching figure couldn't do anything at all, and was torn apart by the dragon's claws like rags, and then rolled and fell to the ground. After dealing with these corrupted kin, Carlo stood up and walked to a corpse. The man's eyebrows are very similar to Carlo, and his appearance is almost the same as Scylla. With a sigh, Carlo stepped over the corpses and continued striding forward. Why can't the Antonio family grow? Are they really excluding dissidents for their rights? The answer is of course not so. No matter what heir or family it is, there will eventually be some unworthy descendants. Compared with power, the continuation of the family is the most important, and the Antonio family is no exception. But this situation only lasted to the generation of the parents of the wise lord. For some special reason, in the generation of the wise master, he has only one direct bloodline. Others, such as siblings first-rate, disappear neatly after a certain day. It is because of this that the waste son of the wise master can take power and destroy the prestige accumulated by the family for hundreds of years. And for this special reason, only the master is in the hands of the next direct bloodline. The reason is actually very simple. The King of Heaven has gone berserk. As the sons of the King of Heaven, they need to use their own blood to protect the family's heritage. Since then, every generation of the direct bloodline, except the talented penultimate, has been sent to the tower, and the power of their own bloodline has been used to suppress the king's rampage. Caro's brothers and sisters, Scylla's brothers and sisters, died, because of this reason. It can be said that every family leader who has stood at the top since then is standing on the mukuro of his siblings. It was their sacrifice that brought Antonio's continuation. It stands to reason that Scylla is in middle age, and the previous generation of Matsuri products have not been completely consumed. The older brother of Scylla, who was killed by Carlo just now, should have more than 10 years to live. However, the fact is that he has been corrupted and turned into an undead, still insane and irrational. What happened in this is the purpose of Carlo's trip. Passing by a mountain village-like building complex, Carlo stopped. It was a Matsuri item that was sent in the past, and it was built while it was still alive. Later, it was used as a foothold by the others, and as a residence before dying. Here, siblings, human skin lanterns, bone marrow oil, any kind of chaos you can imagine converges here. The feeling of waiting for death in an endless space after stripping off Antonio's glossy coat is enough to drive anyone crazy. For example, the hammer with the human head attached to his brother's waist was made from his own flesh and blood and the head of a baby. This place is the place where the dragon is trapped, the worst place, the end of all tyranny. Hence the name of this place. Sin Dragon Abyss. However, it was in that empty building complex that Carlo found a person and a woman. He walked over slowly, lying on the ground respectfully, not daring to keep his eyes on the white and clear skin for a second. Kissing the snow under his feet, Carlo said slowly, "Your Majesty. Your servant listens to your call." Chapter 655 Soul Fruit and Evil Spirit Fruit. It happened a day ago. Once, Blackbeard, Tiki and Beasts, Guy were many, and the two chose to join forces for the first time for the historical text of the road sign in Loya's hand. As a result, because of Loya's backhand arrangement, although they successfully obtained the historical text of the road sign, Guy's fleet was destroyed by Loya, Titch's confidant Lafayette was bled to death by Ulysses, and both sides suffered heavy losses. In the following time, because of the news circulating outside, all forces around the world were searching for their traces. They are not afraid of being knocked on the door by other people, but they are afraid that Loya will find out their location because of this, and he will come to the door, then the problem will be big. So, in the past few months, the two have honestly huddled in the new world, acting like shrunken tortoises. During this period, Titch took the opportunity of self-destruction and threatened Guy to hand over one of the two historical texts of the road signs to him. At that time, Guy was very powerful, and the red stones were in his hands. Titch got only 2 rubbings. But Tiki's ambition is also one piece, so naturally such a big flaw is not allowed to stay in Guy's hands. Guy is really strong, but can he be stronger than Loya? So, in the face of Titch's threat, Guy gave one of the pieces to Titch with a cold face, and the two sides parted ways. Later in the war, Guy sent Betsy because of this. Although Titch did not succeed, at the same time, more importantly, he was severely injured by Loya. Became a bear commander. Guy therefore sensed the opportunity and wanted to do something to Blackbeard. But before he could mobilize his troops, Tiki succeeded in winning over the powerful combat power of several LV.6s by virtue of Ace's raid on the advanced city, and officially established his name as the 4 Emperors. In this way, Guy naturally has to think carefully to see if he should continue to act. After reading the information in his hand, Loya closed his eyes slightly and thought about it. None of the old monsters imprisoned in level 6 are easy to deal with. Some of them are terrifying people who are so powerful and ferocious that their existence has been wiped out by the world government. Tiki, who only had dark fruits left, was able to take them under his command as in the original book, and I have to say that this is all Tokiomi's fault. Guy must have discovered this too, so he would tolerate Titch's gradual rise and become the 4th emperor of his level. So the question is, why did you decide to do it now? The capable legion was disintegrated, and the Mephisto family explained everything under the devastation of Loya. Geisa is now a member of Turtle Island. Without the dope SPX and SMLE artificial devil fruit army, what will Guy do to fight Titch? Onionon, Guy still doesn't like anyone from the Blackbeard Pirates. Onionon the strongest name, but shouted out with the record. But with the addition of Titch itself, the Blackbeard Pirates now has 6 powerhouses with the lowest strength at the general level. Relying on Guy alone, and the flood and insect plague, are they really the opponents of the Blackbeard Pirates? If not, then, what foreign aid did he find? Regardless of the reason, Loya made the trip this time. Some of the foreshadowings he left have to be dealt with in advance. From the moment he returned, this world was no longer a stage for these pirates, but a battle between him and the king lurking in Mary Joa, the 2 strongest. Sitting on the back of the ice wolf, Loya seemed to close his eyes and meditate, but in fact his mind was immersed in the spiritual world and communicated with Ivy. I've always wanted to ask you a question, Mother. Who the hell did you fight and get kicked out of this world? Ivy has also been squeezed out, and Loya, who has experienced it once, knows what level of power it is to break the world's upper limit. It stands to reason that half of the dragon's body has a 90 level, correct, Ivy? There is no opponent in this world, and there is no need to use the power to break through the limit. Oh, that's just a soul fruit person, nothing special. Puff. Soul fruit ability. Luoya spurted out a mouthful of old blood, and asked in a daze, is that the one I put in the dragon roar cannon as an energy source? Gasara was frozen but not considered dead. Ulysses was different from Ratchet. He was more careful. He thought about the problem that the dragon roar cannon could not be recharged if Loya was not there. It was the same as when we attacked Turtle Island. So Garshala, who contained powerful soul energy, was stuffed into the magazine. With her energy level, there was no problem in firing 10 cannons and 8 cannons. It is worth mentioning that, because of a certain target, Perona willingly became the inspector and gunner of the dragon roar cannon. Anyway, Loya bet 500 Bailey, she can't have a child. Knowing what Loya was thinking, Ivy said amusingly, how is that possible? That old woman is at most 150 years old. The one I met at the beginning should be the ability of the previous generation of soul fruit. Ah, since it's nothing special, why are you doing your best? Of course she's not the only one. In fact, there is also the evil spirit fruit capable person associated with the soul and soul fruit. Evil spirit fruit ability. Loya's eyes widened. The upper fruit of the soul fruit. Yes. Ivy nodded and said, you didn't kill her. It's the right choice. It's better for those with the soul and soul fruit ability to be killed by those with the evil spirit fruit ability. I killed her because of the evil spirits. Those with fruit ability are out of control, and it is a good risk that they will not suffer a big loss. Under Ivy's description, Loya also understood what the evil spirit fruit was. Those with soul fruit ability can parasitize in other people's bodies. If they don't have the corresponding means or their own strong background support, their body will be taken away. For so many years, only the Born Destroyer of Anti reluctantly resisted this ban by relying on her powerful talent. But the price was that she was still eroded by Carmelite and couldn't help herself. If the body is taken away, then of course it is dead. As the target of being killed, those banned souls naturally have extremely strong anger and resentment. Combined with the particularity of the soul fruit, the resentment of the soul condenses into an entity and becomes an evil spirit fruit. A kind of devil fruit specializing in revenge on soul fruit. But this is not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing is that this kind of hatred can be superimposed, and the upper limit cannot be seen. That is to say, every time the soul fruit robs another's body, the evil spirit fruit becomes stronger and stronger. Even according to the 800-year known history of this world, there are hundreds of people's resentment poured into it. The reason why evil spirits are called evil spirits is because they only have the consciousness of revenge. The only way to make them disappear is to make them take revenge. Then, Ivy killed the previous generation of soul fruit ability. Then, Those who lost the target of revenge with the power of the fruit of evil spirits ran amok. The power accumulated over the centuries, even Ivy had to take it seriously. However, Binglong is too powerful. Even if he has accumulated grievances for hundreds of years, he is not Ivy's opponent. But later, Ivy was taken away by a wave of fantasy nightmares because of the power that exceeded the upper limit, and the body remained in the world of One Piece. The evil spirit fruit is destroyed, and the stacked hatred is reset. Before leaving this world, I foresaw that I would not be able to return in a short period of time. Once the dragon's body goes berserk, the world will be completely destroyed because of external factors. Oda will also be broken, in various senses. Ivy said as a matter of course, so I divided the body into two, and let them fight with each other in order to complement themselves, instead of mindless destruction and destruction. All for peace. Loya, hee. Believe you are a ghost. You just want to see the finale of One Piece, right? You dead nerd who didn't know you were hundreds of years old. After knowing the truth, Loya's first reaction was, it's better not to know. Chapter 656 Whitebeard's Plan. In the waters deep in the New World, the Beast Pirates and the Blackbeard Pirates have been at war for several days. The highest combat power of the two sides involved each other, and the members below fought endlessly. However, under the leadership of Flood Disaster, Jin, the overall trend of the war is still tilted towards the Beast Pirates. Flood Disaster, Jin, the unparalleled naval battle, is not boasting. Guy can rise in the chaotic world of the Great Pirate Era, stand firm in the New World, and become the Four Emperors step by step. Half of it belongs to his personal strength, and the other half must fall on Jin. A commander who is almost invincible, a commander who makes the world government extremely jealous, and the help he brings to Guy is based on victory after victory. Of course, the previous Zue was the brain behind Guy Duo, and his credit was not small. But anyway, now Guy has more brains. However, the momentary defeat did not shake the Blackbeard Pirates, because everyone knew that as long as several captains worked together, Guy would still fail. Now it's just worrying about the opponent's cards. Titch doesn't want to let the forces that he finally gathered together be hit hard, and he has been restraining himself. Guy have the confidence to fight the Blackbeard Pirates? This question is not only thinking about Loya, but also thinking about Titch. To say that the historical text of the road sign is so hard at all costs, the former Guy Dodic will still believe it, now. Captain, a troop came around from our side. It's a pirate group that we haven't seen before. Hearing the report, King of Bad Politics, Abaro Pizarro said, could it be that Guy joins up with those little pirates? The two sides are fighting. To say that Guy has some trump cards, among the foreign aid, it is indeed these guys who are not the Four Emperors, but they are still not to be underestimated. Although their strength will not control the situation of the battle, their opponent is the invincible Flood in naval battles. Who the hell knows what he's going to do with these guys? However, as soon as Pizarro finished speaking, Tiki rejected the idea. Impossible. Humph. Then what are you talking about? Pizarro snorted in dissatisfaction when he saw that he wanted to ban Titch from becoming the captain. If it weren't for that monster, we would still have a lot of guys in the historical text of the road sign. He is no less ambitious than us, and calling those little pirates will only let more people know that the historical text of the road sign is in our hands. The easier it is to attract peeps. Titch said, after a pause, he said in a heavy tone, at the same time. The easier it is to attract that monster. The undead army has appeared on the periphery of their forces many times, and they have sneaked into it many times. Everyone knows what they are looking for. And not finding it is the reason why Titch thinks he can still be alive to become the fourth emperor. Once Guy exposes more of the historical text, don't think about anything, and Loya will definitely call at the door immediately. How they play is their business, but it is impossible for Loya to continue to watch on the sidelines when the rest of the pirates riot. It's like two predatory fish in a pond attacking each other. The owner of the pond doesn't care, because in his opinion, both sides are a scourge, and one death is less of a problem. And once they let go and devour other fish, the wrath of the owner of the pond will be exterminated and they will be wiped out. There is nothing wrong with this analogy, because today's new world is such a situation of one emperor and 4 emperors. The new world is that pond, and Loya is that master. When it comes to Loya, the rest of the people immediately shut up. To say that they were able to escape from the predicament, it was also thanks to the slash that Whitebeard forced Loya to use. The advanced city was affected by the aftermath and suffered heavy losses. That's why Ace and the others were given a chance to raid, and they were given a chance to escape. After watching the video of that battle, who would dare to provoke that monster? But I agree with your point of view. Titch suddenly changed his voice and said to Pizarro, "It is indeed possible that they were united, but the leader is not many guys, but another there are people. The remnant of Whitebeard." Pizarro's eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty smile. Obviously he didn't like the group of Marco and others who came to harass them all day long. The rest of the people also sneered, exuding the murderous intent of Ling Lai. "Then, Pizarro, take your ship number 4 and destroy them. Find out where those little mice are hiding." "Okay, I wouldn't refuse such a thing." In the former Whitebeard Sea area and now the Blackbeard Sea area, there is a rather prosperous island. The climate of the New World is fickle, and even islands are at risk of being destroyed by natural disasters. No place can be said to be absolutely safe. Under this premise, the island has not been hit by heavy rains and tsunamis for decades, and the environment on the island is even more habitable, and it naturally develops accordingly. At this moment, a group of people gathered in the house of a certain hotel and talked in a low voice. I'm afraid Titch didn't even think that those white-bearded remnants who were driven by him and lost several captains would blatantly hide in his territory. This prosperous island gave them the best camouflage. As long as they dress up a little, a group of traveling merchants from afar will live in the small town hotel. T-Beard's group of pirates are not weak. When they unite, Titch will at least send a cadre to deal with it. In addition, now their main troops are being held back by Guy. Our opportunity is here. The speaker is Ace. After finishing Whitebeard's funeral and rescuing Luffy, his whole mind was on how to take revenge. It was all because of Titch that things got to where they are today. While Ace hated his weakness, he hated Tiki, who was the culprit, even more. Although Loya is also their enemy, but even Titch can't solve it. What did they use to seek revenge for Loya? Don't be impulsive, Ace. Have you forgotten the consequences of your last impulsiveness? Marco frowned, pointing it out. Hearing this, Ace's expression froze, and he lowered his head silently. Seeing this, Marco sighed, patted his back, and said nothing. Tiki's current power is not small, and those pirates who submit to him are all elites selected after life and death. Marco took out the chart and drew a circle on it. Now we can be sure, yes. Except for this part of the area, the rest of the place is not where Titch hides the historical text. Now their main troops are here, and the T-Beard coalition is here. So, lighting heavily on an island, Marco said, "This is the next place we're going to explore. After finding the historical text of the road sign, don't worry about what happens, let others know immediately. We don't have to take it away, just know it, just go anywhere." Just as Titch guessed, Marco and others also believed that the reason why Loya did not eliminate Titch was because the historical text of the road sign that was stolen by them had not yet been found. Although it is possible to kill Titch and Guy regardless of how much to vent their anger, the historical text of the road sign that has not been found is undoubtedly a big loophole. So their plan is to find the historical text of the road sign, tell Loya, and then use a knife to kill. As the site of the original Whitebeard, they are familiar with the road, and it is naturally easier than the undead army to investigate. But, is this really true? Chapter 657, only half the blueprint. Guy often fights with Titch, and Loya leads the team to travel. It stands to reason that at this time in the past, the people of the world government would always make some fools out, and then they would be slapped in the face by Loya and then cede land and pay compensation. But this time, no one did that. It's not that they are really afraid of Loya's strength. Carlo has his own trump card, and the king is in his hand, and Carlo dares to lift the table and not play. In fact, 2 recent events made Carlo unable to separate the energy to deal with Loya. Today, the construction of the 3rd ship, which should be the Pluto, was completed. After the last 2 reports, Carlo was present. The underground shipyard is brightly lit, and bright lights hang on the walls, illuminating the dim underground like day. In that concave channel, a huge and strange warship was docked there. The chill and coldness unique to the metal of the ship made others feel shocked when they saw it. What a beautiful construction this is. Even Vegapunk has to admit that this warship has a design and technology that he cannot match. The slender turrets are erected in a semicircular iron slot, and only one gunner needs to sit in and control several cannons to fire at the same time. The bladder-like design at the front of the bottom of the ship looks very thin, but it brings extremely strong stability to it. And as long as there is sufficient power, it will definitely reach a speed that no other boat can match. This is a powerful to perfect warship. But where is my Hades? Carlo's mouth twitched, as if he hadn't seen the data file handed in. Indeed, the level of this ship far exceeds any other warships and sailing ships in the world today, and even the steel warships they had before could only lean on its back. However, it is just a relatively advanced warship. There are many more powerful models in the unrealizable design drawings of Vegapunk. As a result, he told me that this is the legendary ancient weapon, Pluto. Hearing Carlo's question, the person in charge said tremblingly, "Sir, this is the Pluto on the blueprint." This guy is absolutely loyal after being brainwashed, and it is impossible to deceive himself. Carol suddenly felt anger surging, and sat on the chair to increase his breathing. Hades. Hades. Is this the ancient weapon that I have been looking forward to? Are the ancients too stupid to worship unseen powers as gods? Or is there an error in the family's records, and Pluto is actually like this? After thinking for a while, Carlo summoned Vegapunk and asked, "According to your observation, what have you found?" "An ordinary warship, but with an unusual design." Vegapunk replied truthfully. "Even if I loaded the laser weapon on the warship, there are still most of the blank areas on it. For example, there should be some other external structures in the open space facing forward, which is suspected to be the command room." Quote, "And according to my observations, those weird patterns on the outside of the hull should be some kind of energy channel, which can form a protective shield or have other abilities after activation. It's just that the space we created has a shell, but there is no corresponding machine to play this role." Before Vegapunk could say anything, Carlo silently added, "The design drawings are clear at a glance, and everything that can be seen is in front of him." Needless to say, Vegapunk's knowledge, what he sees will not be groundless. So, the crux of the matter is, we only got half of the blueprints. Carlo's expression condensed, and he immediately gave an order, "Resend someone to the 7 Waters. And the swordsman from the Straw Hat Pirates, hurry up and find it." But Vegapunk stopped him and said, "The 7 Waters is just a place for shipbuilding. We all know Tom's level. Even if Hades was really built in the 7 Waters, these are not ships. It's impossible for them to do things like this. Because even I can only make a rough guess. The technological level that leads the world for 500 years is not just talk." This sentence Vegapunk said firmly. "Those things belong to a large and general system. If the ancestors of the 7 Waters had that knowledge in addition to shipbuilding, I am afraid they would have risen long ago." Carlo also understood this truth, nodded lightly, and motioned Vegapunk to continue. Seeing Carlo nodding, Vegapunk continued, "And that swordsman, don't be too concerned. The design of Hades was finally obtained by us, knowing that there is no hope of getting it back, destroying it is the only thing he has. Choice." Quote. After Vegapunk explained the reason, Carlo was not angry, but calmed down. Indeed, if he were to change his mind to Carlo, he would probably make the same choice. "What do you mean?" "I have a guess, Lord Carlo." Vegapunk said. Pluto was not actually completed by the Seven Waters independently, they were only responsible for building the hull, and the rest of the above was completed by another group. Later, because the power of Hades is too strong, this design is held in half by both parties, so as not to reproduce some kind of disaster. What Tom left to his disciples is the one belonging to the Seven Waters. Doubt, for sure. But Carlo has to admit that this speculation does have a high chance of coming true. For example, the Heavenly King, who is also the three ancient weapons, couldn't be awakened before Loya found White Sword Day. The token handed down from the family, plus the White Sword Day, the combination of the two can truly summon the ancient weapon, the King of Heaven. But believe it or not, it doesn't matter, the preparation that should be done is still to be done. Carlo summoned the black-robed old man and whispered a few words in his ear. The latter nodded, turned and stepped into the shadows again. Such a big living person disappeared out of thin air. Turning his head, Carlo looked at Vegapunk and nodded. You did a good job this time, go back and continue the development of pacifists. Yes. At the same time as Vegapunk nodded, there was a sudden sound of sharp blades entering his body from the shipyard behind him, and then a scream poured into his ears, making Vegapunk feel chills in his heart. Only the dead can keep secrets. Even if it was a brainwashed dead man, Carlo was equally worried. The two walked out of the underground dock, and the fire suddenly rose, igniting the entire shipyard. It wasn't until the raging flames burned everything out that Carlo turned around and left. But at this time, a figure appeared from far to near, with a terrified face. Father, it's not good. Carlo sighed inwardly and asked, what happened? Glancing at Vegapunk behind Carlo, Shinluo didn't say a word, just made a few gestures to Carlo. In an instant, Vegapunk saw that Carlo's face was no longer as calm as it used to be, and Yuhi quickly turned white. Go back. Hurry up. Megan C. Notice. Chapter 658 in the previous volume. If the title is correct, I just clicked publish after coding. Then I didn't find it for a long time, and finally found that this chapter was sent to the end of the previous volume. 30 milliliters of blood. Genuine friends can choose this chapter to read alone, the rest. Dashu can't help. After all, at this time, the editor has not yet gone to work, vomiting blood. Chapter 659 Arrive on the battlefield. If Loya is here, he can recognize that this woman looks exactly the same as the cheap Mother Ivy who gave him the surname, Christopher. And, tall as a giant. This is also the reason why Carlo was able to spot her at a glance and rush over to worship. Turning her head to look at Carlo, who was lying on the ground, she was expressionless, and even said that she lacked emotion. The coldness that freezes people's hearts does not come from some mysterious power, but her icy eyes. After a long time, she seemed to have confirmed something, her lips parted slightly, and her voice seemed to come from above the 9 heavens, and Hiroshi was like thunder, open the door. Under the mysterious blood connection, Carlo's eyes suddenly became confused. He got up from the snow and bowed respectfully, follow your orders, Lord Heavenly King. Then, the giant ivy waved his hand and turned into a huge ice-blue dragon, smashing the village with one foot. The gravel hit the face of Carlo who was walking ahead, but he continued to move forward without feeling anything. Soon, one person and one dragon came to the position where Carlo had just appeared. The place where this world connects with the outside world is changing at any time, and every time you come in, you are in a different location. But within half an hour, people who come in can go back through the rune mark, and it is the only chance to go back. The mark on Carlo's hand exudes Yuhi light, and the void in front of him is distorted, like water and mist. Vaguely, a door-like thing appeared there. Looking at the long-glossed slate and walls, she seems to be able to smell the fragrance of the grass and trees outside. A body that has no emotion and just relies on instinct to act, and there is also a look of anticipation on his face. Then, Carlo took a pocket watch from his pocket and opened it. A dragon's might appeared out of thin air, and the wind and snow in mid-air stopped inexplicably. In the center of the pocket watch, a scale the size of a fingernail was exuding a shimmering light. Seeing it, Carlo's eyes suddenly became clear. Wrong. I'm not holding White Saber Day now. I can't control her at all after going out. What are you waiting for? Hurry up. Hearing the voice from behind, Carlo's hands and feet were cold, and his pupils suddenly tightened. Then he imitated the appearance of being bewitched, and slowly moved the dragon's scales close to the door with stiff hands and feet. Boom. At this moment, the giant dragon realized that something was wrong, and the huge forelimb suddenly stepped down. But when she raised her claws, she realized that Carlo had disappeared in place, and the dragon scale had not been attached to the illusory door from beginning to end. No. In the empty snowy area, only a roar full of anger and tyranny was left, which echoed for a long time. Puff. Carlo rushed out of the gate spouting blood, surprising the family soldiers who were guarding around him. But at this time, they didn't care about superfluous things. They glared and blocked the 5 old stars who had been staying in place before. When Carlo rushed out, Shinluo realized that something was wrong, and quickly rushed up and hugged Carlo. The black-robed old man appeared beside the two of them, and with a wave of his hand, the 3 of them disappeared in place. After a long time, without hearing the order, the soldiers looked back hesitantly, and it happened that they had already left. Then spread out according to the regulations and continued to guard around the tower. The 5 old stars looked at each other and saw the undeniable fear in each other's eyes. Carlo was injured. Isn't the King of Heaven under the orders of the Antonio family? Or, what else is in there? Faced with such a change, the world government has no time to pay attention to the new world's affairs. After a few days of peaceful progress, the dragon boat fleet has arrived in the original Whitebeard Sea area. The last time Loya was just passing by, I didn't take a good look at the customs here. This time I came here with a different purpose, so I naturally had to take a good look. But after looking all the way, Loya was surprised to find that in those islands in the original Whitebeard Sea area, the people lived and worked in peace and contentment, and everyone laughed and laughed. It was like a prosperous world. If these islands were still under the jurisdiction of Whitebeard in the past, it would not be surprising for Loya to have such a situation. It's not so much that he rules the islands, it's more that he protects. But now, this is Blackbeard's territory, isn't it? He doesn't care about the lives of ordinary people as much as Whitebeard. Even if he learned Whitebeard's rule, but now he is fighting more with Guy, and if it fails, it will be a bloody purge. How can they still laugh? At this time, Robin seemed to have thought of something, and gave Loya advice. You forgot, this is the new world. Yeah, the new world. Loya looked bewildered. Isn't it the new world? Lord Robin means that the new world is now your territory, Lord Loya. Simon, who was on the boat, gave him a blank look. Sometimes the calculations were beyond his imagination, and sometimes he was stupid and looked like a little cute new. You talk about burning, killing, kidnapping and abusing in your territory, what will happen? Being chased by the undead army. Luoya smiled and clasped the back of his head embarrassedly. I seem to understand. Don't look at the new world, there is still no shortage of pirates, but it definitely does not include the 4 emperors. Unlike the 2 lucky guys who rushed into the Kid Pirates and the Hawkins Pirates, the 4 royals are big, and the base is there. After ordinary pirates make trouble, the sea is vast, and there is still a place to escape. As the 4 emperors, they couldn't hide even if they wanted to. Facing the attack of the undead army, and Loya, who covered the sky with one hand behind them, should they give up their foundation and start from scratch? It's impossible to even think about it. As a result, this led to the new world, the unprecedented tranquility of the island under the protection of the 4 emperors. Even if there is a pirate raid, it is not the power of the 4 emperors. It is no wonder that the people of these islands can live and work in peace and contentment and enjoy peace and prosperity. When Guido and Titch decide a winner, they are still their ordinary people, and the winner will not do anything to them. However, under such a peaceful situation, there is a fact that makes Loya very heartbroken. That's Dragon Ship Fleet. Run! The undead army is out. Children and women take refuge in the mountains, young men stay ready to fight. Facing the army behind Loya, some islands prepared to die generously with a tragic expression. Some islands send messengers to present the most beautiful women and the most precious jewels, asking Loya to open up. Saying 1,000 words and 10,000, they are all afraid. These guys who can laugh about Guy and Tiki's wars, facing Loya, just like the mouse meets the cat, staged a nationwide trembling all over the island.jpg. This situation made Loya very depressed, but also very comfortable. Because the seeds he planted are still taking root. Looking at their current appearance, I am afraid that there will be a guy in the village who shouts like Luffy to become one piece, and he will be tied up by his own people and sent to Turtle Island to plead guilty. There is a suffocating magic in the dragon boat fleet, and everywhere it goes, it is dumbfounded. After a few days of sailing, quietly, like this, they finally arrived at the frontal battlefield where Guido and Tich fought. Immediately, the two sides tacitly stopped and waited for Loya to speak. Chapter 660 Lorik Redfield. From the war to this day, the two sides have fought a real fire. Even if Guy and Tiki can't give orders, the soldiers who killed Yuhi's eyes will rush forward with a scream. Until now, officials from both sides have been dispatched many times. After several struggles, the evil government king was seriously injured by the insect plague, Becky, and is still in a coma. Flood disaster, Jin was also cut off by a hand by the Moon Kiba hunter, and was almost dismembered. The arrival of Loya not only gave them a reason to stop fighting, but also gave them a time to sit down and take a breath. The huge dragon boat fleet was lined up in a circular arc, which vaguely surrounded the troops on both sides. As long as Loya gave an order, both sides were within their striking range. Madness. But he has this qualification. Sitting on the back of the ice wolf, Loya casually hit Heish and glanced at the figures standing behind their respective camps. Guy is as tall and strong as ever, but now his skin has turned auburn, and the skin that wraps his body is probably closer to a rock. The heart on Tiki's left was crushed by him, leaving a crimson Yuhi-colored pit. Others thought he was just injured by Loya, but they didn't expect that even the heart was taken out. On Tich's right face, 3 raised scars are centered on the temple, and the dense stitches are connected to it, like 3 ugly flesh-colored centipedes lying on his head. Glancing at them, Loya said, "What? Tired of living?" As soon as he opened his mouth, Loya shocked the others with the attitude of the master. Guy's face was ashen, and the red Yuhi rolled under his skin, like a volcano about to erupt, but he understood that even if he merged with the heart of stone, he could not be the opponent of today's Loya. That kind of power that destroys the sky and destroys the earth is not at the level he can imagine. At this time, Loya continued. For the stability of the new world, that's why I allowed the two of you to continue living. Now it seems that you don't intend to give me this face. PFF ha ha ha, Mr. Loya, it's not that I don't give you face. Tiki had a hearty smile on his face, as if the enemy who almost killed him was not in front of him. My Blackbeard Tiki took over the white after the beard's territory, no civilians were plundered at all. This time the army was launched because Guy came to the door more and had to protect himself. Blackbeard, Tich, really can bear it. But Loya doesn't care about this. His strength is his confidence. On the Sea of New World, everyone will bow to him. Immediately, Loya said lightly, "You're very smart, Tiki, and that's the second reason why I didn't kill you. So, guys, are you not going to give me face?" After saying a word, Loya turned his attention to Guy Duo again. The sharp gaze made Guy's skin get goosebumps, but he could only obey him honestly. But just as he was about to speak, a figure walked out from behind him. The figure did not go from dark to bright, but countless bats in the color of Zuyuhi gathered together to form a human appearance. Just like the vampires in the legend, just appearing, there is a strong bloody aura in the air. This person is about 2 meters tall, standing next to Guy Duo like a child. But the momentum on his body is a bit stronger than Guy's. He has pale pink hair on the left and right sides of his forehead, and he wears a blood-colored hood with a red yuhi base. He holds a slender umbrella with a metal lacquer finish. At the handle of the umbrella, there is an iron statue of a bat spreading its wings. Seeing this guy, Loya frowned slightly. Lonely Rider, Baroric Redfield. Baroric Riderfield, known as Lonely Yuhi, Earl Yuhi, Lonely Rider, is extremely powerful, and just by one person, he is on par with Roger and Whitebeard. It may not be clear to say that, so to give a chestnut. More than 20 years ago, Sengoku was in charge of hunting down Whitebeard, Garp was in charge of hunting down Roger, Crane and Zephyr were in charge of hunting down Golden Lion. Then as the strongest at that time, the former commander of the Navy, the current commander of the whole army, and, Steel, Kong, what are you doing in those chaotic times? The answer is that the enemy of the air pursuit is Baroric Redfield. A terrifying figure who did not eat devil fruits, but kept pace with Roger and Whitebeard. If it wasn't for the former ex-marshal, Cyborg, who fought to the death and exhausted Baroric Redfield's physical strength and let Garp pick up the leak, I am afraid that the ownership of One Piece would really need to be changed. This is Baroric Redfield. If I remember correctly, after Letterfield escaped from prison, he ate bat fruit, phantom beast, and vampire form in order to restore his youth. Count Yuhi. Whispering out the name, Loya felt a gaze looking at him and opened his eyes. The former, Blood Count, and now the Blood Lord, Ulysses, was looking at himself with a fiery look. It was the first time that Ulysses, who had been calm since he became an undead, showed such a strong will. It's not that he didn't think about getting back the previous fruit ability like K-Roctal did. After all, it is the power that he has held for more than 200 years. As long as he gets it, he can exert a high level. Even if he takes into account the magic practice, it will not affect the development of the fruit. However, the devil fruit target is too small. With Turtle Island's current power, Ulysses did not find the fruit he had in his lifetime. Seeing Redfield at this moment, the familiar call told him that the opportunity had come. Take it easy. Loya gave him such a look, looking at the figure beside Guy Duo. Lonely Rider, do you, an old senior like you, even join forces with Guy Duo? Seeing Loya's performance, Titch was shocked. He rubbed his chin and thought, where did I seem to have heard of this name? Beside him, Keg, Bucks Choate said drunkenly, shaking his rosacea, have you forgotten, Captain? There are many people in level 6 who don't want to follow you, and Ryder is one of them. Does he have any strengths? I think Loya is a little afraid. Haha, it's not a question of strength, Captain. It's been almost 30 years since Redfield was arrested, and you who only got on the Whitebeard ship 20 years ago don't know the story of Ryder. Choate laughed, then but a guy who's on a par with your dad and Roger by one person. Speaking of this, Choate's drunken eyes were a little dangerous, and he looked at Guy with killing intent. No wonder Guy is so confident to fight us. If the opponent is that Ryder, our previous beheading plan will not only fail, but also heavy casualties. Is it that powerful? Go alongside Whitebeard and Roger. Titch can't imagine how strong a guy who can keep pace with Whitebeard and Roger just by himself, but he can guess that if it is now, he is probably on the same level as Loya. Immediately, Tiki laughed grimly. Interesting. So what would you do, Loya? Tiki's expression was seen by Jot. He was still smiling drunk, but full of coldness. Arrogance is Tiki's biggest weakness. He is very not optimistic about the future of his captain, and now he is committed to it, just to find a safe haven. There was a sentence he didn't tell Titch. Before Whitebeard, Roger and even Ryder became famous, there was a more terrifying guy who ruled the vast sea of New World. He appeared for a short time, but the span is very long. People of that era, even the world government, were very afraid of this name. And that guy is standing beside Loya at this moment.